Chapter 1822. The lunch hour ended in a cheerful atmosphere. The ordinary customers returned home satisfied after eating two brand new dishes at a price that was far below their expectations and the restaurant's normal price. Meanwhile, the powerhouses from various races were mesmerized by the miraculous illusion. Many of them were still standing outside the door after the lunch hour ended. They were in no hurry to leave. Irina didn't go far either. She was sitting on a bench not far away. If it weren't for the fact that a bunch of 10th-tier powerhouses were standing at the restaurant's entrance, she would have teleported back to ask Mag directly. "Why aren't you leaving after eating?" "I'm preparing to tutor my precious disciple." "Hurry up and leave. Don't disturb my disciple's studies," Crassus said with dissatisfaction as he waved his hand at the powerhouses from various races who were waiting eagerly. The powerhouses rolled their eyes and didn't intend to move at all. "Forget it. Do you think we don't know what you're thinking? We just want to ask that boss what's with the stir-fried octopus tentacles and octopus balls. Since most of us saw some miraculous images after eating them, it's obviously beneficial to our cultivation. Naturally, we have to thank the boss," Lewis said with pursed lips. "Do you guys think that this boss's culinary skills have reached a level that can shake the laws of heaven and earth? That's why this dish allowed us to see some miraculous images," Dracula said curiously, speculating whether this possibility was true. The powerhouses fell into deep thought and couldn't make up their minds at that moment. These two dishes were indeed very delicious. Apart from Meg himself, no one else could make anything more delicious. No one could say for sure if someone with such superb culinary skills could reach the celestial realm, just because of a single skill. "You'll know once you ask. Why are you still thinking about it?" Douglas stepped forward and rang the doorbell. "Isn't the lunch hour already over? Why is there still someone knocking on the door?" The ladies who were cleaning up the restaurant turned around in surprise. Mia put down her plate and was about to open the door to take a look. "I'll go." Meg casually hung his chef's uniform at the side and walked toward the door. He had long noticed the experts of various races waiting outside the door, and he couldn't help but wonder why they had stayed behind. Previously, they had been gorging themselves on the stir-fried octopus tentacles and octopus balls, as if they had already forgotten about the nightmarish battle yesterday. Moreover, all of them were so engrossed in eating that they had entered a state of oblivion. One had to know that these were the top experts of their respective races and had received professional training. Normally, they would not allow themselves to reveal such an appearance and state. Moreover, after eating, they didn't leave. They all waited outside the door, as if they wanted to ask him for an explanation. This meant that the tentacles were most likely beneficial to their cultivation. The only thing that could arouse the interest of a top-notch 10th-tier powerhouse was the Heavenly Tao Law. "System, what's with your octopus tentacles? There won't be any problems, right?" Meg thought to himself as he walked towards the door. After the system's tens of thousands of tests and live experiments, the octopus tentacles are non-toxic and harmless after consumption. Furthermore, they are rich in protein and nutrients. Long-term consumption can effectively improve the human body's immune system and promote growth and development. If you eat one meal a day, you can climb 6 floors in one breath by the age of 80 without panting, the system said proudly. "One breath. If I don't pant, I'll be dead." Meg rolled his eyes. The system had basically said nothing. "Let's see how it goes first." Seeing that the system couldn't explain why, Meg could only wait and see why these experts had stayed behind. When the door of the restaurant opened, Meg was surprised to see more than 10 experts of various races standing outside the door. "Everyone, the restaurant is closed. Haven't you eaten your fill?" Everyone looked at Meg from head to toe. Today's incident was too mysterious, and they couldn't help but wonder if the restaurant owner was a hidden expert. However, no matter whether it was the probing of their divine consciousness or the scanning of their mind power, this restaurant owner looked like an ordinary human. Perhaps because he had been working in the kitchen for a long time, he was slightly stronger than ordinary humans. However, he was still not as strong as a strong first-level knight. He could easily kill a dozen of them with a fireball on the street. Lewis stepped forward and said loudly, "Boss, we're not here to eat. My precious disciple works here, so I won't beat around the bush with you. We just want to ask you what's with the stir-fried octopus tentacles and octopus balls. Are these two new dishes not to your taste? If that's the case, why don't I refund the money for this meal to you? You don't have to come to the restaurant to eat in the future, Meg asked tentatively. His face was filled with worry and melancholy, just like a small boss who had been extorted.
No, boss.
That's not what we meant. Louis hurriedly waved his hand. It would be a great loss if he couldn't come to a restaurant that could provide such delicious food in the future. Then what do you mean? Meg was still puzzled. He looked up at the powerhouses. You're really not here to return the goods? Of course not. The powerhouses hurriedly waved their hands. This restaurant owner was quite good at changing the topic. We just want to ask how you made the octopus tentacles and octopus balls. Louis changed the way he asked. The powerhouses also looked at Meg expectantly. You want to learn? Meg chuckled. This is a trade secret. Under normal circumstances, I can't teach you. All the powerhouses rolled their eyes in unison as they looked at Meg with hostility. This chap was really asking for a beating. I say, you're all reputable figures from your respective races. There's no need for you to learn how to make dishes halfway through, right? It looks simple, but if you really want to learn how to make it, most of the time, your brain can learn, but your hands can't keep up, Meg persuaded earnestly.
All right, boss.
We'll be honest with you. After we ate your stir-fried octopus tentacles and octopus balls, we saw some illusions. Louis was a little helpless. It seemed like this restaurant owner really didn't know anything. He could only be more direct. You can't say such things. I never put drugs in my food. You can't use this to blackmail me just because you're strong. I'm just a small family, and I can't afford to be tormented by big bosses like you. Meg hurriedly waved his hand. He looked around and was about to call for help. Don't call. We saw something good. Louis hurriedly stopped him. Something good. Meg was a little suspicious. I didn't put any aphrodisiac in it. How are you able to see the good stuff? Fuck, Louis's face darkened. Chapter 1823. Meg had a rough idea of the situation. It seemed that after eating the octopus tentacles, these old fellows had indeed hallucinated and saw something good in the hallucination. If it was something good with color, they naturally couldn't gather here to ask for an explanation. They would be treated as hooligans and dragged away. Therefore, what they saw must be the legendary laws. The laws were really good stuff. After a level 10 expert reached this realm, there was no room for improvement by relying on pure cultivation. What they competed in was the comprehension of the laws. Naturally, it was easier for those with great talent to become stronger, such as him. As for those with ordinary talent, they could only compete in age. Others comprehended one law in a year, while you comprehended one in 3 years. However, others could only live for 100 years, but you could live for 3,000 years. Therefore, as long as you lived to 101 years old, you would be able to defeat him. As long as you lived to 300 years old, his descendants would never be able to defeat you. Unless there was a genius with great talent such as Alex Meg. This world was cruel and realistic. It wasn't that the giant dragon clan was really talented, nor was it because they were born from eggs. It was just that they could live longer, so the chances of obtaining top-notch experts were naturally higher than other clans. System, what's going on? Could it be that the octopus tentacles weren't cleaned properly, so there was a hallucination effect? Will this cause them to be bewitched? Meg asked in his heart. If the Great Old One wantonly controlled the level 10 experts because of him, then he would have sinned greatly. According to the system's analysis, there are 2 reasons for their hallucinations. One is the host's superb culinary skills, which allowed their souls to enter a relaxed state. The other is the special effect of the Great Old One's tentacles. This has appeared in the experiment on mice before, but the effect on mice is positive and the duration is very short. It doesn't affect their consumption and has a certain feeding effect, so the system didn't specifically remind the host. The Great Old One has lived for more than 1,000,000 years. There are countless laws imprinted in its genes. This is something even it can't use, but after cooking and eating, there is a certain chance that the consumer will discover it, the system quickly replied. I see. Meg was deep in thought. In other words, what the Crassus and the rest saw was the laws imprinted in the Great Old One's body over 1,000,000 years of life. After eating it, there was a certain chance of triggering and viewing it. This wasn't something that could make them stronger directly, but it was something that every level 10 expert desired. To observe the origin of laws at close range, and only needed to pay 40 copper coins to repeat it 4 times. This kind of happiness was unimaginable. In order to prevent these people from having any negative thoughts, Meg was still calm and was a good boss who protected his own dignity and his own restaurant. Louis also realized that this boss was a little stubborn. On second thought, he was just an ordinary person, and it would be too difficult for him to understand the laws. He could only change the way he asked. Then let me ask you, where did you get these octopus tentacles? Of where? Louis. He knew where the octopus grew in the ground. It was in the Thunderstorm Mountains, 15 kilometers away from Chaos City. But no one dared to eat it. All right, Louis. Don't keep asking Mr. Mac this and that. He's just a chef. How would he know all this nonsense? If you really want to experience it again, you can just line up at the restaurant's entrance every day. You won't be able to cook it even if you ask. Crassus interrupted Louis impatiently. Louis glanced at Meg. He thought about it and agreed. Talking to him was not the same as talking to him. Not only was it tiring, but it also made him feel awkward.
All right.
I'll come again at night. Louis nodded. He looked at Meg and smiled again. He gave him a thumbs up and said, "Boss, you cook really well." After saying that, he left. The powerhouses from the various races saw that Meg really didn't know anything, so they all left. Only Crassus and Julian were left. Masters, is there anything else? Do you want to come in for a cup of tea? Meg looked at the two of them and became much friendlier. After all, they were Amy's teachers and had always taken care of the father and daughter. They were elders. There's no need for tea, Mr. Mac. I'm just asking. I was a little busy a few days ago, and I still have 2 lessons to make up for Amy. Why don't you help me ask her if she wants to go for lessons today? Crassus chuckled with a humble tone.
I
still have 1 more lesson, Julian said after coughing softly. Isn't it the holidays already? Why do you still need to make up for lessons? No way. I'm not making up for it. Amy suddenly popped her head out from behind Meg. She looked at Crassus and Julian and said coquettishly, "Masters, just go home and play. Let's all have a holiday together, all right?" The moment Amy acted coquettishly, their hearts softened. "All right, then we'll talk about it later." Julian nodded. All right. I won't go. Little Amy, just stay at home and play." Crassus shook his head with a smile. He paused for a moment and said, "But in 3 days, we have to set off for Rodu. Master will take you to participate in a competition." Rodu? A competition? Amy was confused. Yes, a magic caster competition. But Master wants to take you there to broaden your horizons and see how lousy the magic casters are. Crassus nodded. If you go, you naturally have to get first place. If you can't get first place, then you don't have to go. Julian's voice turned cold. He glanced at Crassus with a hint of mockery and said, "Don't you just want little Amy to see how those guys from the Magus Tower suck up to you?" "What's wrong?" "I'm jealous." Crassus chuckled. He wasn't angry at all. "Is there a reward for getting first place?" Amy asked curiously. "Of course. If you can get first place, you'll receive a purple gold magic stone. You can also directly enter the Magus Tower, or become a disciple of an elder of the Magus Tower." Crassus nodded with a smile. "These 3 purple gold magic stones are a gift from Master." Julian pulled out 3 purple gold magic stones from a storage ring and handed them to Amy. He smiled and said, "As for the elders of the Magus Tower, none of them can beat me." Crassus, Julian, don't undermine me like that. "I'm just teaching my disciple the correct value of money," Julian said with a serious expression. No pop-up window. Chapter 1824. Everyone left. Amy carried Ugly Duckling and brought Anne out to play. Meg closed the door and turned to look at Irina, who appeared in the restaurant. He smiled and said, "Do you have a lot of question marks? I know you didn't tell them the truth just now. So what exactly is going on?" Irina nodded and looked at Meg curiously. "What did you see?" Meg was not in a hurry to answer. "A ray of holy light, the real holy light, piercing through the universe." "Have you learned it?" "Not yet, but as long as I see it enough times, I'll learn it sooner or later." Irina shook her head slightly. "So, what exactly is going on? Why does this dish have such a miraculous effect? Is it related to that octopus monster?" Meg looked at Irina thoughtfully. After pondering for a while, he said, "I'm not too sure about the exact situation at the moment. It's said that when one's culinary skills reach a certain level, it will have some miraculous effects on the dishes they cook. For example, the tofu pudding that can beautify one's looks, the Buddha jumps over the wall that can make one bald and grow hair, and the effects of this stir-fried octopus tentacles and octopus balls might be the same." Irina stared at Meg for a while and said with a strange expression, "That means your culinary skills are already able to stew the heavenly Tao in a pot. It's not that exaggerated. Maybe it's just an opportunity for you guys. Things like the heavenly Tao are naturally understood by those who understand it. For those who can't understand it, even if they see it, it's still useless." Meg shook his head. He did not mean to hide it from Irina on purpose. It was just that things like the system were not easy to explain. The more he said, the more mistakes he would make. And if he told her that she ate the octopus monster's meat, she might vomit on the spot. Thus, he could only attribute all of this to his miraculous culinary skills. Anyway, this could not be replicated. Of course, the more important point was that Irina was obviously very interested in the holy light law and intended to continue using this opportunity to observe the real holy light. This feeling was probably similar to when you were eating chicken gizzards or intestines. The boss wouldn't specifically tell you which part it was and what its main function was in the host's body. Irina looked at Meg doubtfully. "It really has nothing to do with the octopus monster? Do you think that if I used that octopus monster to make octopus balls, I would sell them for 40 coppers each?" Meg shrugged. "That's right. You sold a fried dough stick for 80 copper coins." Irina nodded her head. Extracting the tentacles of that octopus monster was extremely dangerous. How could they sell it for only 40 copper coins? "That's decided by the market value. I didn't set it high." Meg's face was calm, without the slightest blush. It must be noted that a demigod knight had woken up early every day to make the youtiao for them. Not to mention 80 copper coins, even 800 copper coins would not be excessive at all. "You look pretty today." Meg looked at Irina with a smile. "You like it?" Irina smiled shyly. "Yes, I like it." Meg nodded. The shyness on Irina's face instantly disappeared. She looked at Meg with a hint of a smile. "So you like beast-eared girls? Tell me, is there anything between you and Connie?" Meg glanced at the small leather whip in her hand, and his smile gradually disappeared. Was this a fucking trap? And thinking about it carefully, this was a suicide question. If you say you like her, she will say it's not her, and you will serve her with a small leather whip. If you say you don't like her, the only thing that could possibly appear was a folding chair. "I mean, I like all of your looks." Meg tried to keep his mind cool and clear. His brain was working rapidly, and he began to think of some cheesy words of love in his head. "Then if I turned into Gloria, would you like it?" Irina asked with a smile. "Meg. System, can you help me send a request for help? I'm really in a hurry right now." Meg's little heart pounded. He didn't know what Irina and Gloria had talked about when they were eating. It was really distressing. Netizen replies, "You can pretend to be unconscious." The system quickly replied. Meg's eyes rolled back, and he immediately fainted on the ground. Looking at the unconscious Meg lying on the ground, it was Irina's turn to be dumbfounded. "Are you for real?" Irina hurriedly bent down and grabbed Meg's wrist. Her heart was beating a little fast, but it was still within the normal range. "Pretending?" Irina narrowed her eyes, and the corner of her mouth curled up. With a snap, the whip in her hand hit Meg's side. Meg's eyelashes trembled, but he still controlled his reaction. "All right, stop pretending. Let's skip this question." Irina put away the whip and lightly kicked Meg's foot with the tip of her foot. Meg opened one eye and glanced at Irina, who put away the whip. He let out a sigh of relief, then opened his eyes in a daze, sat up, and asked with a confused expression, "What happened to me just now?" "Tisk, you've learned how to pretend to be dead." Irina giggled as she took out the folding chair that she had hidden behind her. Meg. He was extremely scared. Fortunately, Irina didn't really do anything. Otherwise, if they fought, he really didn't know whether he would win or lose. "That girl is quite cute." Irina put away the small stool and found a chair to sit on. Meg knew that she was talking about Gloria and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Could it be that she wanted to find a younger one for him? However, he quickly dismissed this thought. This could be another clever way of fishing. The stool that he put away might be doubled back. A man must be steady. Being too fast would often lead to bad things. Are you talking about En? She is quite cute, but it's a pity that she doesn't know how to speak. Meg poured a glass of water for her, sat down opposite her, and nodded. Irina glanced at Meg. She didn't know if he really didn't know who she was talking about, or if he was pretending. "Oh, right. Crassus just said that he would bring Amy to Rhodu to participate in the Magic Caster Conference in a few days." Meg pretended not to see Irina's expression and changed the topic. He didn't like to dance on the tip of a knife. If he accidentally fell, he would either lose his life or his penis. Boring competition. It's just a bunch of guys below the 8th tier. However, it's a chance for Amy to gain experience. Irina nodded slightly. Amy is only 4 years old now. Isn't it too early for her to become famous? Meg was a little worried. "I became a high-level magic caster at 10 years old. You killed a dragon at 23 years old and became famous early. This is our family tradition," Irina said matter-of-factly. Meg thought for a moment. There were no flaws in her words. "I heard that Andre wants to talk to you personally. The person who will invite you should be on his way." Irina suddenly stopped smiling. "Do you want to go?" No pop-up window. Chapter 18:25. "I'm not going." Meg shook his head. Although he didn't know where Irina got the news from, he still explained, "Andre wants to rope me in and make me stand on his side again. Then, he can start to conquer the Norland continent without any scruples and build an unprecedented empire." Meg was a pacifist. Although he was standing on the side of the humans, this was just returning the pain to the few races that had once oppressed the humans. However, once the war started, there would be no winners. Ordinary people and soldiers at the forefront would all be sacrificed. Irina nodded slightly, as if she had expected Meg's answer. "Helena also wants to talk to me." This surprised Meg. With Helena's character, she was not someone who would bow down to others easily. He didn't expect her to take the initiative to look for Irina. "Are you going to go?"
Yes.
Irina nodded. "I won't agree to any of her conditions unless she abolishes the family system of the elves and allows the elves to return to their original state. This is also a condition that she will not agree to." "Then what is there to talk about?" "I just want to see her flustered and exasperated expression when she can't kill me." Irina smiled. "I'll go with you?" "That's not necessary. If you go, she won't dare to come." Irina shook her head. "What if they set a trap to lure you into it again? After that day when you attracted the lightning to blow up the octopus, I don't think anyone will dare to do anything to me in the short term. Otherwise, Andre wouldn't have lowered himself to meet you in person." "Helena knows the current situation of the elves better than anyone else," Irina said with a smile. Meg nodded. He knew how smart Irina was. She wouldn't put herself in danger easily. "I only found out today that many young ladies like you." Irina looked at Meg with a smile. "This is not something I can control. It's just like how those men can't take their eyes off you when they see you." Meg shrugged helplessly. He couldn't be blamed for being too outstanding. "Are you jealous?" "No. I'm just showing off." Irina left after finishing her cup of water. The number of elves that had been sent to Chaos City had skyrocketed in the past few days, and there were some things that she had to deal with personally. Meg followed closely behind. He first went to the smithy next door to check on Hannah and Mobai's progress. "Boss, come and take a look. Are there any problems with these parts?" Hannah, whose face was covered in soot like a kitten, saw Meg walk in. Her eyes lit up, and she pulled him to the forging table. After the explosion, she had completely lost confidence in her design. Now, she only wanted to be a salted fish under the guidance of a big boss. Mabai also stopped swinging his hammer and looked at Meg expectantly. Meg picked up a few simple parts on the forging table and looked at them carefully for a while. He then measured them with a ruler and nodded. The craftsmanship is rigorous. There are no problems with the size and material. These parts are qualified. That's great. We didn't stay up all night in vain. Hannah jumped up happily. Mabai chuckled and said, "Hee hee. Mr. Mack, your design is really good. I can understand it at one glance. It's just a casual drawing. You're too kind." Meg cupped his hands politely and accepted this flattery. After making sure that Mabai could make the parts according to the blueprint, Meg didn't want to continue staying in the hot and stuffy workshop, so he bade farewell and left. Stir-fried octopus tentacles and octopus balls were very well received. He naturally had to hurry up with his plan to sell the great old one with the system. Firstly, he needed a suitable shop to be the first octopus tentacle stall. Secondly, he had to open up a chain from the boundless sea realm to Chaos City to harvest, transport, and sell octopus tentacles. The octopus tentacles provided by the system could be sent directly to the shop, but once the business started, it would naturally attract the attention of others. How to explain the source of the ingredients would become a hidden danger. In the face of doubt, it was useless to just shout, Alex, did not cheat. This was a business that produced 100 tons a day. Even if 500 grams of octopus tentacles were sold for 50 copper coins, the daily turnover would be at least 5 million copper coins. Selling vegetables is indeed more profitable than cooking, Meg calculated in his heart and pursed his lips. Moraton Manor, Meeting Hall. Jeffrey took a sip of tea as he listened to his wife, Denise, sobbing at the side expressionlessly. Cyril and his family of 4 stood at the side with the same miserable and sorrowful expression as if they had suffered a huge grievance. "Master, you don't know this, but Gloria really thinks she's the head of the family after we left Chaos City. She's been bossing us around, and she doesn't even respect me, her grandmother. Tell me, how am I supposed to stand for this humiliation? If even I was treated this way, our poor son, Cyril, and his family were treated even more miserably. Although they had been obedient to Gloria throughout the journey, she had never treated them well. She fed them worse than animals and almost chased them out of the manor. Tell me, she is just an heir now, and she is already so heartless. If she really becomes the head of the family, will there still be a place for us in this family? Master, you have to be the judge for us, Denise said as she wiped her tears. Grandpa, you have to be the judge for us. Herdy and Herney also sobbed. Their eyes were red from the chili, and they did look quite interesting. Aviva was also wiping her tears at the side and sobbing from time to time to make her presence felt. Cyril cast his eyes down and didn't say anything. He was surreptitiously observing the changes in Jeffrey's expression out of the corner of his eye, and he couldn't help but be in awe of his mother's acting skills. She was the only one in their family who was able to make such a dramatic story out of thin air. Are you done? Jeffrey, who hadn't said a word, glanced at Denise, who was still wiping her tears, and asked in a cold voice. Denise faltered slightly upon hearing this. She felt as if her thoughts had been completely seen through by Jeffrey, and she couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Her voice also lowered slightly as she said, Master, I think you should reconsider your previous decision. Cyril was indeed a bad person in the past, but he already knows that he was wrong, and he'll definitely change in the future. He's your son, after all. Only a man can support a family. Is Gloria back yet? Jeffrey said to the door. Master, Miss Gloria has just returned to the manor. She should be resting in her villa now. Menard stood at the door and said respectfully. Tell her to come here. Jeffrey nodded.
Yes.
Menard turned and left. You have said so much. It's time for Gloria to say something. Let's see if what you said is true. Jeffrey looked at everyone's slightly changed expressions and smiled coldly. No pop-up window. Chapter 1826. Did Miss Audrey fall in love with Mr. Meg? Mr. Meg is so outstanding. His cooking is so delicious, mature, steady, gentle, considerate, and good-looking. Even if she fell in love with him, it doesn't seem strange. She's so beautiful, has a good figure, and is so bold. Will Mr. Meg fall in love with her? Gloria sat on the swing in the courtyard and frowned. She had a lot on her mind. After returning from Mamie's, she felt that she had gained a friend, but it also seemed that she had gained a rival. How can you think like that? You and Mr. Meg are just business partners. Gloria blushed. She suddenly realized that she was thinking about these things like a little resentful wife. It was as if Mr. Meg was already her exclusive possession. Mr. Meg was so outstanding. He was always surrounded by a group of beautiful young ladies. Just the waitresses in the restaurant were as beautiful as fairies. What is our family's Gloria thinking about? Why is your face so red? Are you thinking about some family's young master? Deborah had appeared in the courtyard at some point and was looking at Gloria with a smile as she sat on the swing. Mother. Gloria raised her head and met Deborah's eyes. She shyly and guiltily said, I'm not. Deborah looked at Gloria's expression. She already had an idea. She smiled and said, Tell Mother, which family's young master can make my precious daughter think about him. If he's suitable, I'll have your father talk to his parents. You've also reached the age where you should talk about marriage. I'm really not. Gloria quickly waved her hands. She looked at Deborah, but suddenly recalled what Miss Audrey had told her before. A marriage without the blessings of one's family would not be happy. After hesitating for a while, she looked at Deborah and said, Mother, let me ask you a question. I have a friend who has fallen in love with a single man with a daughter. Do you think they can be together? Which friend of yours? Deborah asked as she looked into Gloria's eyes with a hint of scrutiny. It's a friend I met recently. She's a beautiful orc lady. Gloria felt a little guilty and answered casually. Deborah didn't suspect anything. After all, Gloria never lied. She thought for a while and said, although a man raising a child alone doesn't necessarily mean that he's a bad person, if your friend really likes that man, she still has to consider it carefully. Whether or not she could accept the child was very important to the child and her future life. The second is whether her family will agree to this marriage. As parents, who doesn't want their daughter to marry a good husband? After all, raising a child is still somewhat different. Amy is cute and sensible. Mr. Meg, raising a child alone, is mature and steady. He knows how to take care of others. Moreover, he doesn't show off his talents. He's low-key, gentle, and well-educated. He's indeed different from those spoiled young masters. Gloria looked thoughtful. It seemed that her mother and the others also liked this kind of person very much. Gloria's face blushed slightly. She didn't expect her mother to be so open-minded. In this case, she and Miss Audrey were on the same level again. Miss Gloria, Master wants you to go to the meeting room. At this moment, Menard respectfully said from outside the courtyard. Okay. Gloria agreed and jumped down from the swing. I heard that after Cyril and his family came back, they went to your grandfather's place with your grandmother. Deborah looked a little worried. Mother, don't worry. Grandfather has his own judgment. I'll be back soon. Gloria said with a smile and turned to walk out of the courtyard. This child has grown up. Deborah looked at Gloria's disappearing figure and smiled with relief. Gloria arrived at the meeting room. Jeffrey was sitting at the head of the table. Old Madame Denise was sitting on his right. Cyril and his family of 4 were standing to the side. Grandfather, grandmother. Gloria walked up and greeted Jeffrey and Denise first. Then, she looked at Cyril and his family indifferently. Gloria, what's with your attitude? Don't you know how to greet your uncle and aunt when you see them? Cyril was a little dissatisfied. You're not strict enough and your behavior is inappropriate. You're embarrassing family Moraton. That's right. We're older sisters. Herdy and Herney also said with a sharp tone, I wonder if Uncle Cyril has the same awareness when he's messing around outside. Does he know that he's embarrassing family Moreton? Gloria looked at Cyril and said calmly. As for the two sharp-tongued cousins, she directly ignored them. She only thought of them as noisy old crows. You... Cyril's face and ears flushed red upon hearing that. Herdy and Herney's faces were also red. They wanted to tear apart that perfect face of hers. Gloria... Denise's face was cold. She raised her voice and was about to scold Gloria. Cyril and his family said that you've been giving them a hard time along the way. Is that true? Jeffrey interrupted Denise and looked at Gloria. I went all the way up north to seek refuge. Gloria acted according to the rules, and my conscience is clear, Gloria replied calmly. Jeffrey looked at Gloria and suddenly smiled. He nodded and said, You've done a good job leading the family to the north. Go back and rest. Gloria's eyes flashed with a strange light. However, she still bowed slightly to Jeffrey and Denise and turned to leave. Father, this... Cyril looked at Gloria's departing figure and suddenly became anxious. Shut up. If you still want to stay in this family, you'd better think about how you're going to behave in the future. Jeffrey looked coldly at Denise and said, Too kind a mother will spoil her son. Then he left in a huff. Denise and Cyril looked at each other in confusion. Chapter 18:27. Mr. Mac, it's been a while. Meg had just stopped his bicycle when Robert went up to him with a smile. President Robert, it's been a while. Meg shook Robert's hand. This president of the Food Association was his old friend and a regular at the restaurant. However, he hadn't been to the restaurant for a while. I heard your restaurant has come out with 2 new delicacies again, and they've been well received, Robert said with a smile. Although we're old friends, it's not opening hours yet if we're having a meal, Meg said with a smile. I'm not here to have a meal today. I'm here to give you an invitation on behalf of the Food Association. Robert took out a gilded invitation from his handbag and handed it to Meg. The annual Chaos Cities Delicacy Conference will be officially held in 3 days' time. As the organizer, the Food Association would like to formally invite you. As the kindest star in Chaos City's culinary world, Mamie's hopes that you can come and participate. Delicacy Conference? Meg received the invitation with a little surprise. Do I need to do anything if I'm participating? The Delicacy Conference is an annual culinary event in Chaos City. We will set up a booth for every participating merchant. The merchants can cook delicacies on the spot to show off their skills and make a name for themselves. They can also sell delicacies on the spot to increase their income. Of course, Mr. Meg can also be our special judge and participate in the judging of the best delicacy of the Delicacy Conference, Robert explained. Meg's eyes lit up when he heard that. That was a pretty good publicity method. He then asked, how many people are participating in this Delicacy Conference? The Delicacy Conference has been held for 14 years, and the number of people participating in each of the past 3 years has reached 200,000. It might be even higher this year. Robert smiled very confidently. All right. I will participate in this Delicacy Conference, but not as a judge. I will be an exhibitor. Meg kept the invitation with a smile. Increasing income is the most important thing. Robert laughed heartily and nodded.
All right.
I'll get someone to send you the details of the exhibition tomorrow. After watching Robert's horse-drawn carriage drive away, Meg pushed his bicycle into the restaurant. He was not greedy for the traffic of 200,000 people, but he wanted to use this food conference to promote the Octopus series of delicacies and make them a real hit. Although Mamie's business was booming, due to the price threshold, it was only a favorite in a small circle. Most ordinary people only knew that it was a rather expensive restaurant. Meg didn't try to change the situation when the reception capacity was limited. The current flow of customers was already too much to handle. However, the target audience of the Octopus Tentacles business was not the restaurant's regular customers. A portion of stir-fried octopus tentacles at 100 copper coins and a portion of octopus balls at 40 copper coins were simply too cheap for them. Rather than having them cook up specious food at home, They might as well spend a few hundred copper coins at Mamie's and enjoy the joy of sitting back and reaping the fruits of others' labor. His target group was the broad masses of the people. Only by mobilizing the people to throw themselves into the craze of eating the old dominators could the business of selling the old dominators flourish. For the past 2 days, he had been thinking about how to promote the way to eat octopus tentacles. Recruiting apprentices was one way, but the results were too slow. If he were to expose the recipe, people might not be interested in stir-fried octopus tentacles since they didn't know what it was like. Just as he was worrying, Robert stuffed a pillow over. Of course, he had no reason not to hug it. With 200,000 people's super traffic and the cliché, but most eye-catching gourmet rankings, if the octopus tentacles could dominate the rankings, it would naturally attract enough attention. If he were to expose the recipe at this time and draw traffic to the octopus tentacle shop, it should be able to bring about excellent results. Looks like I have to hurry up with the opening of the shop. The combined flow of traffic is an advanced method. If anything goes wrong, the effect will definitely decrease a lot. Meg calculated in his heart, and at the same time, he said in his heart, "System, I've already bought the shop. I'll leave the renovation to you. Host this system. System, we're partners in this business. I've spent more than $5 million to buy this shop. I've invested a huge amount of money in the beginning, and I'm responsible for the marketing, flow of traffic, operation, and so on. I'm just asking you to renovate it, and you're still not satisfied?" Meg interrupted the system. The system was silent for a while. "Okay, host. This system will renovate the shop. I'll send employees in the day after tomorrow. You should prepare the first batch of goods first. If nothing goes wrong, this gourmet conference will be the key point in our career of selling seafood." Meg smiled. As for the source of employees, he was prepared to recruit from the night elves. He knew them well, they were trustworthy, they were efficient in their work, and they were pleasing to the eye. They were simply too suitable. The special effect of the stir-fried octopus tentacles and octopus balls forced the powerhouses of various races, who had originally planned to leave after eating a good meal, to stay. Although the rules they saw could not be directly used for their own purposes, and how much they could comprehend depended on each person, this did not affect their enthusiasm at all. The opportunity to go further was right in front of them, so how could they bear to miss it? Alex's strength allowed everyone to see the possibility of reaching level 10 and above. Meg did not mind this, but seriously considered the possibility of refining the octopus balls into octopus pills, and then selling them to a level 10 powerhouse at a high price. However, on second thought, octopus balls were octopus pills, right? He was really too kind to sell them for only 40 copper coins each.
Ding.
As a partner, this system must build the host. There was a serious error in the pricing of the stir-fried octopus tentacles and octopus balls this time. The system's voice sounded in Meg's mind. Meg, who was grinding tofu, raised his eyebrows. Only with a low price can it be promoted on a large scale. What's wrong with the pricing? A low price is indeed the primary condition for a large-scale promotion. Just like pork was the favorite meat of China before it became a luxury item, but this is the price of the ingredients. If the host wants more people to buy octopus tentacles, other than letting them know that it's delicious food, you must also let them know that it's expensive to eat octopus tentacles and octopus balls in a restaurant. By buying octopus tentacles and cooking them at home, you only need to pay less than 1/10 of the price of ordering in a restaurant to make a delicious dish. The sense of accomplishment and the idea of trying it out will definitely lead to a stronger desire to buy it. The strong contrast between the expensive items on Mamie's menu and the cheap items on the octopus tentacle stall is the real marketing gimmick. Host, you've only seen the first layer of the marketing strategy. There's still a long way to go before you're the real king of marketing. The system said earnestly. Very good. I'll leave marketing to you in the future. Bosses like us only need to invest. Meg snapped his fingers. No pop-up window. Chapter 1828. Since the prices of the dishes had been set, Meg naturally couldn't change them. However, he had to admit that the system's pricing strategy was reasonable. He had made a mistake that all newbies would make. Fortunately, there were still 2 dishes that hadn't been released yet. There was still room for price increases. The restaurant once again welcomed a peak customer flow in the evening. Masters from various races still managed to grab the front row. They entered the restaurant excitedly and ordered the octopus tentacles and octopus balls. Many of the restaurant's regulars also ordered the new dishes at a low price. They wanted to try the new dishes or relive the delicacies. Audrey, the orc queen that Irina had transformed into, was also in the team. What made Mag heave a sigh of relief was that Gloria didn't come at night, and that made him feel less stressed. There's nothing between Gloria and me. Why do I feel guilty? Meg couldn't help but reflect. However, he couldn't find a reasonable explanation for himself. Mr. Mac, your dishes are delicious. I feel like I'm starting to like you. Irina stopped beside Meg when she entered the restaurant. Here are the dishes. It's my pleasure. Max smiled as he felt the envious and jealous gazes directed at him. He suddenly enjoyed this feeling a little. Wow, brother, I haven't seen you for 3 days. Why do you look even weaker? Randy sat down in front of Vicenio and asked in surprise when he saw the pale-faced Vicenio. Don't mention it. I went to the West Mountain to see the snow with my wife. At first, it was Madame who asked me to take care of myself. Later, it was Madame who asked me to take care of myself. I almost died on the way. Vicenio rolled his eyes and said weakly, I was helped in just now. I can't even walk by holding onto the wall. My sister-in-law is such a sentimental person. Randy was speechless. He suddenly felt lucky that Vicenio hadn't introduced him to a beautiful and rich auntie. You'd better order a bowl of Buddha jumps over the wall to nourish your body. I'm afraid your body won't be able to take it. That's what I'm thinking. Besides, I've already thought of an excuse not to go home tonight. I'll find a place to have a good night's sleep. Otherwise, I really can't take it anymore. Vicenio's eyes were filled with tears. Randy sighed in his heart. Young people always broke down quietly. Looking at the pitiful and helpless Vicenio, he couldn't help but feel pity for him. He wondered if he should let him stay at his place for the night. You're still the best. Not only do you not have a wife, but you also don't have to think about going to several places to collect rent when you wake up every morning. Take me, for example. Even if I don't go home at night, I still have to worry about which house to stay in. Vicenio sighed as he looked at Randy enviously. Thank you. I was offended. Randy was smiling, but he was cursing in his heart. When I was young, I always thought that I was capable and smart. When I grew up and experienced many things, I realized that I was useless and ordinary. Vicenio was secretly sad. I only have a face that attracts rich women. This is a gift from God. Randy nodded. He relied on his talent to make a living. That's right. A gift from God is enough for a lifetime. Vicenio nodded and looked at Randy with pity. For you, I can only rely on my talent. How tiring is this life? Randy suddenly felt a little autistic. Looking at Vicenio's pale face, he suddenly didn't feel pity for him at all. Instead, he smiled. Brother, why don't you go home and sleep tonight? If sister-in-law can't find you, she'll be very lonely at night. Aren't you afraid that there'll be a grassland above your head the next day? If you think that anyone can get into her bed, then you're underestimating me. Even if I don't want to work hard, not everyone can do it. Vicenio looked at Randy with a confident smile. Although he didn't say anything, Randy felt offended again. Oh, right. Didn't you ask me to introduce you to a lady last time? My wife has a lady friend whose man abducted her maid and ran away. She's been feeling sad recently, and she's in a relationship gap. At this time, a woman's threshold for the opposite sex will be lower. As long as you're gentle and considerate enough, I might be accepted as an exception and not have to work hard anymore, right? Randy received it with a strange expression. He felt offended again. Exactly. Vicenio snapped his fingers. I've seen my wife's lady friend before. She's about 30 years old. She lost her husband when she was young, but she took good care of herself. She inherited her husband's family property. There are 30 shops, 2 pubs, and an ironware factory in Aden Square. Her assets are over 100 million. Randy, who was originally in low spirits, became brighter and brighter. Especially when he heard the word lost her husband. He couldn't help but think of that rainy night and that crazy lady boss. Randy smiled as he grabbed Vicenio's hand. Bro, you must ask my sister-in-law to introduce this lady to me. Money isn't important. I just want to be friends with her and comfort the sadness and emptiness in her heart. Bro, you have to think carefully. Once you're on this path, there's no turning back, Vicenio said to Randy earnestly. Don't worry. My nickname is the widow's friend. It's my responsibility to take care of those ladies who lack love and care. Please let me see her as soon as possible. I'll definitely be able to help her walk out of her shadow and return to a positive life, Randy said seriously. Vicenio nodded. Since that's the case, I'll go home tomorrow and tell my wife. Then I'll arrange a time for you to meet.
All right, bro.
Let's have a few drinks tonight. We won't go home until we're drunk, Randy said excitedly.
No.
Vicenio waved his hand. Bro, you might not know this, but our bodies are what make the ladies like us. Drinking alcohol will gradually drain your body. When you can't take anything out anymore, the game will be over. So, the first lesson I'm going to teach you today is how to maintain a healthy body for a long time. Quitting alcohol is the first step. We have to sleep early and wake up early to maintain a healthy schedule. We have to exercise every day so that our spirit and body are in a good state. Look for a few masters to learn some skills so that you can maintain your mystery and attractiveness to the ladies. At the same time, you have to learn a wealth of sweet talk skills, skills in bed, skills in the car. Wait, why don't we talk about this in private? I'm afraid. The more Randy listened, the more frightened he became. He leaned forward and whispered. Vicenio was stunned when he heard that. He took a deep breath, and his face turned pale. He turned his head and looked left and right. We do have to be careful. I heard that Devil 404 is everywhere. No pop-up window. Chapter 1829. After the meal, Randy followed Vicenio to visit his mansions in Chaos City. He had a deep understanding of this brother's rich material life after he didn't have to work hard. You see, the life of the rich is so simple and boring. Vicenio locked the door and sighed. Let's find another place to stay tonight. This place is too tacky. It's full of gold and silver.
All right.
Randy was already numb. This brother was good at everything, but he liked to poke at people's hearts. He also had difficulty choosing.
Oh, yes.
I'll bring you to meet a few friends tomorrow. It'll be good for you to get to know them. After getting on the horse-drawn carriage, Vicenio said, We're all in the same boat. You can gain some experience from your seniors and make your career a little longer. You have to know that there's a dwarf who's over 400 years old among them. He made 8 rich women die and gained a lot of wealth. He can be said to be an evergreen tree in the world of freeloaders. Could this be the legendary Freeloader Alliance? Randy was shocked. Vicenio thought for a while and nodded with a smile. That's a good name. Then, I must go and take a look. Randy nodded. He suddenly felt that this could be an important turning point in his life. It could even change his writing career. Perhaps many years later, he would write a book called The Years I Lived Off a Woman to commemorate his youth. Or he could write a tutorial with titles like How the Ordinary You Can Live Off a Woman, Auntie, I Don't Want to Work Hard, and Auntie, You're Dreaming. Oh, yes. Let's continue the topic that we didn't finish in the restaurant. How should a boy protect himself when facing a woman who's as ferocious as a wolf? Brother, are you the model of not being able to protect yourself? You feel like you're going to be sucked dry at any time. Randy interrupted carefully. He looked at Vicenio, who looked a little more relaxed after eating a big pot of Buddha jumps over the wall, and felt that he was close to being sucked dry.
You're talking about me.
This is talent. Vicenio smiled. I've been weak since I was young. When I first met my wife, my physique was even worse than now. However, I'm very resilient. You think I can't do it anymore, but I can do it 7 more times. To a woman, this will create a strong desire to conquer. She always feels like she can squeeze you dry, but she can't do it. She can't stop. Of course, normal people can't learn this technique. Brother, you're awesome. I'm impressed. Randy stared and gave him a thumbs up. He suddenly felt that he still had a long way to go. King of freeloaders. I'm coming. After the opening hours, Mag closed the door. Irina came down with 2 crystal glasses and a decanter filled with red wine in her hands. She shook them in her hands and smilingly said to Mag, "Would you like to have some?" "Of course. What else do you want to eat?" Mag smiled at her. Grilled brain is also very good. Meg walked out of the kitchen with 2 large metal plates and placed them on the table. Irina licked her red lips and glanced at the red wine beside her. I feel that red wine doesn't suit the occasion. Grilling and beer are more compatible. Drink some red wine first to stimulate your appetite, then drink beer. It's also very good. Meg raised his wine glass and said with a smile, "Cheers." "Cheers then." Irina raised her wine glass and drank the entire glass of red wine in a few mouthfuls. Meg, who was about to put down the glass after taking a small sip, raised his eyebrows and hesitated for a moment. Then he also finished the glass of red wine in his glass.
Beer.
Irina put down the wine glass, her face flushed, and looked at Meg with her charming eyes. "I'll go pour it." Meg stood up and walked to the kitchen with a smile. After a while, he came out with 2 glasses of beer and a small beer barrel. He knew Irina's alcohol tolerance. Although it wasn't to the extent that she wouldn't get drunk after 1,000 glasses, 1 or 2 glasses of beer were definitely not enough to deal with her.
Slurp.
Irina pinched a scallop with 2 fingers and put it to her mouth. Then, she used a small spoon to scoop the vermicelli together with the scallop into her mouth. She also took a sip of the sweet and delicious soup. No pop-up window. Chapter 1830. Supper was the best consolation after a tiring day. The 2 of them focused on the crayfish in front of them, chatting occasionally and toasting from time to time. It wasn't that sweet, but there was also a blissful warmth. "Do you think Amy will be angry if she comes downstairs and sees us having supper behind their backs?" Irina asked Meg with a smile as she sucked her fingers. "Maybe. She must be super fierce." Meg nodded with a smile as he looked at the smiling Irina. "But she's still growing, so it's not suitable for her to have supper at night." "Are you going to Rodu with her the day after tomorrow?" Irina asked as she took a bite of the mutton skewer. "I won't be going. With Akras's power and status in the Roth Empire, Amy will definitely be safe." Meg shook his head and added, "There's a delicacy conference in Chaos City 3 days later. I've already promised the Food Association's president that I will attend." Irina nodded slightly. Crassus was like a godfather in the Roth Empire's magic world. Andre must have had the intention of roping him in by inviting him back to host the Magic Caster Conference, so there wouldn't be any danger. "Did anyone from the Roth Empire come to look for you today?" "I didn't see anyone." Meg shook his head. "Besides, they probably don't know where to look for me." "That's true. A powerhouse who has no scruples is the scariest." Irina nodded with a smile. "Compared to that, I'm actually more worried about where the remaining half of the Great Old One is sealed. Since the Great Old One in the Thunderstorm Mountains could break free from the seal, the remaining half would most likely be able to do it too." Meg put down his wine glass with a grave expression. During the celebratory banquet held by the City Lord's castle previously, the powerhouses of the various races had already reached an agreement. Every race would search for possible traces of the Great Old One within their territories. Once they find anything, they would inform the various races immediately and deal with it together, Irina said. "I'm just afraid that they've been sealed in a desolate place, or in some dangerous places, or even in the vast ocean. You have to know that Atlantis was also a continent 10,000 years ago." Meg was still not very optimistic. "If I can fully control the holy light, perhaps I can purify them directly," Irina said after some thought. "Before that, all the races of the Norland continent still have to work together to make some preparations. At least, the first step will be to renew the peace treaty during the peace conference a few days later. I don't think the Roth Empire will agree. They have the power to challenge the dragons, but their territory is almost the same as the goblins. Actually, I also agree that we should redivide the territories of all the races. 100 years ago, during the peace negotiations, we divided the territories according to the power of each race. However, we used a racial war that engulfed the entire Norland continent to verify the power of each race. 100 years had passed, and there were differences in strength between the various races. It was already different from back then. The size of the Roth Empire's territory is the lowest among all the races. More than half of it is frozen land that can't be cultivated or used. This is a huge obstacle to the survival and development of humans. You want to restart the wars? Irina was a little shocked.
No.
What I want to do is to put aside the war and rearrange the power of each race on the negotiation table. After that, we will redivide the undeveloped lands according to the power of each race. The dragons occupy the Dragon Island, but the land under the Dragon Island that is several times bigger than the Roth Empire is completely deserted. There is also a large piece of deserted mountainous land in the southwest of the Orcs' territory. There is quite a lot of such land. If we can give some of these lands to the Roth Empire, it will be enough for the Roth Empire to settle down their citizens. Do you really think Andrei will be satisfied with this bit of land? Moreover, I'm afraid the other races will find it hard to accept such an act of ceding land. Irina didn't agree. I know Andrei's ambition, and I also know that the other races won't be able to accept ceding land easily. However, if Andrei doesn't have a valid reason, he won't be able to make the Roth Empire fully participate in a racial war that engulfs the entire Norland continent. This will be fatal to his plan. Meg smiled. Although I am no longer a general of the Roth Empire, I should still have some influence. Irina's eyes lit up, and she seemed to be deep in thought. If we can maintain 100 years of peace, we only need to work hard to remove the barriers between the different races in these 100 years, and let the entire Norland continent be like Chaos City. All the races can live together on equal terms and become one. Then, we can solve the possibility of racial war, Meg continued. Although I feel that this won't be an easy task, at least Chaos City has already proven that it is possible. Irina nodded and looked at Meg with admiration. Scram. All of you get out. The expensive tea set and porcelain were all over the floor, and the whole bedroom was in a mess. A few maids ran out of the room in a panic. The two 10th-tier knights guarding the door looked at each other and closed the door helplessly. Josh, whose hair was disheveled, leaned against the corner of the wall and slowly slid down to sit on the floor. He picked up the wine flask in his hand and poured it into his mouth. His eyes were a little dazed. His left ear had been shaved off, making his originally handsome face look a little strange. Alex. How can you get up again and again? Josh clenched his fists tightly, and his nails dug deep into his flesh as he growled like a wild beast. It had been 2 days since he returned from Chaos City, but he still couldn't walk out of the shadow of that sword. He lost an ear, his dignity, and his courage to face Alex. The phrase, "I'll come and take your life at any time," echoed in his mind every day, like a curse. Even the slightest movement outside would make him extremely nervous. If he didn't get himself drunk, he wouldn't be able to sleep. However, for the past 2 days, even getting himself drunk had become such a difficult task. Alex attracted the lightning to blast the demon, slashed Weston with his flying sword, and cut off his ear with one strike. He had left an indelible mark in his heart. Become my servant. I will bestow upon you the great power that has been passed down since ancient times. I will let you kill all your enemies, and let those who are not loyal to you fall into the boundless hell. A tempting voice sounded in his heart. Josh looked up at the wooden box under his bed, and his eyes flickered. Josh is already crippled. Alex's actions have done me a huge favor. In the first prince's residence, Xiao stood in front of the hall, wearing his armor. He looked toward the south with a carefree smile on his face. There was a small ball of paper beside his feet, which had been shattered by the power of his finger. Then it was blown away by the wind. What happened to Josh in Chaos City naturally didn't escape his ears. For the past 2 days, Josh had shut himself in, and his incompetence and rage were all within his control. The road to power had never been so smooth. No pop-up window. Chapter 1831. Meg sat up from the single bed in the study. The first rays of the morning sun shone on the bedside. After a moment of daze, he reached out and turned off the alarm. He seemed to have drunk a little too much last night, so he couldn't remember much of the details. He lifted the blanket and took a look. His pajamas were still intact, so it seemed that nothing interesting had happened last night.
Click.
With a soft sound, the door was pushed open. Amy, who was wearing a black magician's robe, ran in and stood in front of the bed. She turned around and looked at Meg expectantly. "Father, can I wear this to the Magic Caster Conference? I heard that if I get first place, I have to go up on stage to receive the award." "Of course you can. Our Amy is the cutest little magic princess." Meg nodded with a smile. He didn't know when the little girl had gotten up and changed into a full set of magician's robes. If it wasn't for the strand of hair on her head that seemed to have some thoughts of its own, she would have gone up on stage to receive the award.
Great.
"Then I'll go and receive the award like this." Amy's lips curled into a smile, and her eyebrows curved as if she had already defeated all the magicians and was about to go up on stage to receive the award. "Amy, come here." Meg smiled and waved his hand. "Okay." Amy obediently came over and sat down at the head of the bed. "Our little baby has grown up a little." Meg gently placed his hand on Amy's head and helped her press down the strand of hair on her head. The soft hair was as soft as a kitten's feather, and it glowed with a golden light under the fine sunlight. Amy tilted her head and reached out to pinch Meg's face. Her blue eyes sparkled as she said in a childish voice, "It's a good thing that father hasn't aged at all. Amy won't allow you to grow old either." Meg's heart trembled, and he suddenly felt warm. He smiled and nodded. "Okay, as long as Amy doesn't grow up, father won't grow old." Amy thought for a moment, and a slight hesitation appeared on her face. "What's wrong?" "Then Amy doesn't want to grow up. I don't want father to grow old. I want father to stay with me forever. Amy doesn't want to grow up." Amy shook her head with tears in her eyes. "Little fool. Father will stay with you until you get tired of me and want to explore the world yourself." Meg pinched Amy's little nose. "I won't. Amy loves father. Father, I won't get tired of you." Amy's little legs essay little SSSSSSSSS2s. "She's to Meg, and ugly's Anne. Sister, and will be alone, and is you. Beez's play to play. I'll take good care of her." Meg nodded with a smile. He didn't expect the little one to miss and take care of Anne. She's not even 4 years old yet. "Good morning, father. I'll go back first. I still have a few sets of clothes to wear for her." Amy jumped off the bed, walked to the door, and paused. "Sister Anne and I had tofu pudding and youtiao this morning. Master Crassus said we'll be leaving this morning." "Okay, baby." Meg agreed with a smile. He got out of bed and changed into his chef's uniform. After washing up, he went downstairs to prepare breakfast for the little one. It was a 3-day trip, so he didn't have to bring much. Besides, Crassus was with him, so he didn't have to worry too much. Soon, Irina also came downstairs. She was still in her pajamas. She stood at the kitchen door with the warm water Meg had poured for her. She drank the water while watching Meg make breakfast. "Good morning. Did you sleep well last night?" Meg looked back at her and said with a smile, Pretty good." Irina nodded lazily. "Amy and want to eat youtiao and tofu pudding this morning. What do you want to eat?" Irina thought for a while and said, "I want a plate of rainbow fried rice and a serving of soy milk." "Okay." Meg nodded slightly and preheated the soy milk machine. Little Amy changed into her maid's robe early in the morning and came to my room to show me. It seems that the little one wants to go out and play. She just wants to go out and fight. Irina also smiled.
She's like me in this aspect.
When I was young, I liked to find people to fight. I liked to see the look on their faces when they didn't like me, but couldn't do anything to me. The corners of Meg's mouth curled up. That didn't seem to have changed. When I came down just now, I saw that and was very interested in Amy's mage wand. Do you think we should let her try learning magic? Irina put down her cup. If she's interested. Meg paused for a moment and nodded slightly. I think it's okay. Then I'll see what kind of magic is suitable for her, Irina said with a smile. When Meg finished making breakfast, Amy and also came downstairs. Meg added a poached egg for each of the two little ones. They needed to eat more protein when they were growing. During breakfast, Irina looked at Anne, who was sitting opposite her and eating quietly, and asked, "Anne, do you want to learn magic?" Anne was stunned. Amy pointed at the magic wand on the side. Anne's eyes lit up, and she nodded with anticipation in her bright eyes. During the past few days, Anne had been learning sign language from watching videos and practicing her hearing. She was already able to roughly understand what they were saying, and she could also use sign language to communicate with them.
Give me your hand.
Irina held Anne's hand gently, and several streaks of golden light appeared and revolved around their hands. Irina looked at the streaks of golden light, and her brows furrowed slightly. She only let go of Anne's hand after a long while. How is it? Meg asked. Amy and also looked at Irina, with anticipation in their eyes. This is the first time I've seen something like this. Irina shook her head. Her mind is empty. I can't see any elements. So she can't learn magic. Meg's brows furrowed. Disappointment appeared on Amy and Anne's faces. No, her mind is so vast that I've never seen it before. Even a 10th-tier magic caster doesn't have such a vast mind. Irina shook her head and looked at Anne as if she was a treasure. It's just that I can't determine what kind of magic is most suitable for her. This child's upper limit will be beyond 10th tier. Mag was also rather shocked when he heard that, but he quickly came to a realization. After all, Anne had once lived with the Great Old One. Although her mind was still a child, her talent couldn't be seen as an ordinary person. She might really be able to break through the shackles of 10th tier in the future. Chapter 1832. Does this mean that Big Sister Anne will become a very, very powerful magic caster in the future? Amy asked in surprise. Anne seemed to have understood Irina's words as well. Her eyes were also glowing as she looked at her expectantly. Irina nodded with a smile.
Yes.
As long as we can find a suitable magic spell for her to cultivate, her power should be able to improve very quickly. Her vast sea of consciousness is enough to ignore all bottlenecks and shackles. Then how can we find a suitable magic spell for her and to cultivate? Meg looked at Irina. This is the first time I've encountered such a situation, but I've tried it just now. She shouldn't be able to cultivate light magic or life magic. Irina shook her head, and then looked at Anne with a smile. There's no hurry. We just need to find different magic casters to test her. Although it's a little troublesome, it's not difficult. There are many night elves who cultivate various types of magic. Meg nodded slightly. Irina was obviously more professional than him when it came to cultivating magic. After breakfast, Irina went upstairs to change her clothes, and then went out. Yabamiya and the rest came to the restaurant one after another. Not long after, Crassus rang the bell, took the breakfast that Meg packed for him, and was about to leave with Amy. Ugly duckling, you have to stay at home obediently and accompany Big Sister and okay? Amy said seriously as she stroked Ugly Duckling's head. Meow. Ugly Duckling looked up and licked her little hand, looking at her reluctantly. Be good. I'll be back soon. I'll give you some dried fish when I come back. Amy pulled out a dried fish from nowhere and fed it to Ugly Duckling. The little fellow immediately lowered its head and ate seriously. That little bit of reluctance disappeared instantly. Goodbye, Big Sister Anne. Amy gave Anne a hug and then said goodbye to Meg and the ladies of the restaurant. Then, she picked up her staff, flung her magic cloak, and followed Crassus out of the door. There were already many customers lining up at the entrance of the restaurant. Their eyes lit up when they saw Amy, who was wearing a magician's robe and a magician's staff. Why are you going there, little boss? Harrison asked with a smile. Let's go to the Mage Tower and eat good food, Amy said seriously. If there's too much good food, you won't come back? Is there a chef better than my father? It doesn't exist. Amy flung her cape and strode after Crassus. Everyone looked at her departing figure and felt a sense of valiance. Little Boss is going to Rhodu with Master Crassus to participate in the Magic Caster Conference, right? Looks like this year's Junior Division champion has already been decided. That would really make Chaos City proud. Little Boss will definitely become the pride of all magic casters in Chaos City. Rhodu, your little demon queen is back. The customers discussed with kind smiles and expectations on their faces. It felt like they were sending their children off to battle. Meg stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and watched as Amy followed Crassus onto their flying steeds and disappeared into the horizon with a smile on his face. This was the first time he had let Amy go on a long journey with someone after coming to this world. The little fellow had finally changed from a timid half-elf to a little magic caster who dared to say that she could go to the Mage Tower. Although Meg had a gratified smile on his face, he was also a little fearful in his heart. Perhaps he would have to watch her leave more and more often in the future, while he could only stand here and watch her go on an adventure in a wider world. Amy is a very outstanding little magic caster. She will definitely return victorious. Don't worry, boss, Yabamiya said with a smile. Meg looked at Mia's energetic smile and also nodded with a smile. He looked at the clock on the wall and walked towards the door as he said, "Let's get ready for business." After the morning business hours, Meg went to the shop he bought yesterday. The originally old shop had become a bright and beautiful seafood store overnight. Other than the good signboard, the U-shaped seafood display cabinets made the best use of the two storefronts at the entrance of the market. Customers did not have to enter the shop to buy and could just stand outside the shop. The long display cabinets were divided into 10 stalls, and 10 salespeople were in charge of the cashier at the same time. Even if the business was booming, they should be able to handle it. Meg entered the shop. There was a freight elevator against the wall that led to the cold storage on the second floor, so that it was convenient to pick up the goods. The entire second floor was a medium-sized cold storage. Meg estimated that it could store 300 tons of goods. "Host, isn't the octopus tentacles store designed and renovated by this system very good?" The system's voice sounded with a hint of wanting to take credit. "It's all right. It's an outsourcing standard of 250. Meg nodded. The use of space and layout were indeed very good. The system was still quite reliable. If he were to find a team of dwarven craftsmen to do the construction himself, he would definitely not be able to finish it in less than a week. Meg walked around the shop twice. Because the freezers were set up outside the shop, the interior space was very spacious. The system had also set up a staff lounge, where one could lie down and rest while on the tatami. There was also a massage chair in the corner. The drinking water area and bathroom were also equipped, fully implementing the people-oriented concept. After confirming that there were no mistakes, Meg left the shop and rode his bicycle straight to the textile factory in the north of the city to look for Ashley. "Mr. Meg, Her Highness has already told me about your request. These 20 are the suitable candidates that I have chosen. You can choose 10 of them to be your first batch of employees," Ashley said to Meg with a smile as she led the 20 elves out. Meg had given the night elves a lot of help, so Ashley was very respectful to him. Repaying kindness was the tradition of the elves.
All right.
Meg nodded and looked at those elves. There were both males and females among the 20 elves, and they all had outstanding looks. The handsome men and beautiful women were obviously specially chosen by Ashley. Furthermore, Meg sensed slightly and discovered that there were 2 fifth-tier magic casters among them. The rest were also 3rd-tier or 4th-tier magic casters. It was naturally a little overkill to let them be salespeople. However, the night elves were saturated with talent now, and there was no place for them to settle down temporarily. Irina and Ashley also had the intention of letting them gain more experience so that they could adapt to life in Chaos City. When these elves were in the Wind Forest, most of them were the slaves and servants of the nobles. They only regained their freedom after following Irina to Chaos City. Naturally, they wouldn't reject this kind of job where they could earn money with their own ability with dignity. In fact, they even looked forward to it very much. Meg could already feel that from their gazes. Hello, everyone. I am Meg. The new seafood shop only needs 10 employees for the time being, and because the work is a little complicated, I need to conduct a simple interview with all of you, and then choose 10 of you to be the employees, Meg said to the elves with a smile. Have the restrictions placed on you by the City Lord Mansion been lifted? Ashley was a little surprised by Meg's question, but she still quickly answered, it hasn't been completely removed yet. Due to the large number of night elves, there is a daily limit on the number of people who can leave the factory. However, it has increased from the initial 500 to 5,000. Meg nodded slightly. The City Lord's office had accepted the night elves into the city, but it had its own difficulties. Letting the night elves slowly integrate into the city was a good thing for both parties. Meg smiled and said, I've already received the first payment for 10,000 bolts of cotton yarn. I'll have the finance department record the payment today, and then I'll be able to give them their first month's salary. Living in Chaos City, you can't avoid money.
All right.
Ashley's eyes lit up. Although Meg had given each elf 1,000 copper coins in advance, and the factory's food and lodging were all covered, they still had to plan carefully if they wanted to go out and buy things. Giving the workers wages could also let them feel the rewards of their labor. This was completely different from being exploited endlessly in the wind forest. Apart from that, I also intend to introduce another 12 mechanical production lines for cotton yarn to increase production efficiency. While not affecting the supply of cotton yarn, I'll leave a portion for precision processing. You intend to weave cloth? Ashley was a little surprised.
Yes.
Cotton yarn is the lowest-end industry. Although we're using mechanization to increase production efficiency, the profit margin isn't high in order to open up the market and lower the selling price. After the precision processing becomes high-quality cotton, the value will increase tremendously and the profit margin will also increase significantly. Meg nodded and then added, Of course, we'll only make the highest-end premium cotton fabric, so the output won't be too high. Ashley was deep in thought. After hesitating for a moment, she still didn't understand and asked, Since premium cotton fabrics have higher profits, why don't we vigorously develop and produce premium cotton fabrics? The rarer something is, the more expensive it is. If premium cotton fabrics run rampant in the market, then its price will naturally fall. Meg smiled and shook his head. Although a monopoly can bring rich benefits, it will greatly harm the workers in this industry and may even bury the root of our troubles. Although this industry will eventually experience the impact of machinery and a reshuffle, this is a predictable and slow process, and it shouldn't be overturned overnight. We'll just take the most generous sum of money on the table. It's not moral enough to flip the table. Ashley suddenly understood, and her gaze toward Meg was filled with even more admiration. Mr. Meg's structure and foresight were far beyond the reach of ordinary people. Meg walked around the factory. The land that Irina had bought from the city lord's residence was very large. Currently, only half of the spinning factory and the night elves' residential area were used. Meg made a rough plan and divided the new spinning factory area and weaving factory area. He still had to go back and slowly study the loom himself. However, it was the same as the spinning machine and it wasn't a high-precision machine. He had a ready-made blueprint of a medieval loom in his memory, but the precision was too low and it definitely couldn't meet the requirements of premium cotton fabrics. It needed to be further improved. He had already introduced the steam engine, and the textile industry would definitely welcome a huge change in the near future. Meg took off from the wind first, and by the time the steam spinning machine became popular, he would have already played in the next industry. After leaving the spinning factory, Meg went to the hill. The appearance of the great old ones had disrupted their original deployment of the steam engine, but the trial run had been successful. As long as the peace negotiations could continue, the steam engine would start a new era. The hill was full of confidence. Meg knew that the hill's judgment was not wrong. The steam engine was indeed about to start a new era, so he signed a steam engine priority supply contract with the hill. I heard that the textile factory that Mr. Meg and Princess Irina are working on is already on the right track. Are you preparing to expand production so soon? The Hill signed the contract and smiled at Meg. Yes, the efficiency improvement brought by machinery is very obvious. Many labor-intensive industries will be replaced by machinery, and this is an irreversible trend. The capitalists who master the machinery technology first will reap the greatest benefits. Meg smiled and nodded. Manufacturing steam engines is naturally the best business. No pop-up window. Chapter 1834. The Hill smiled. She didn't doubt Meg's judgment at all. The successful trial run of the steam locomotive and the high efficiency of Meg's spinning factory proved that the steam engine could be widely used. I heard that Mr. Meg and Miss Gloria have deep cooperation. I wonder when we can cooperate in other areas. The Hill's red lips curled up slightly as she looked at Meg with a smile. Meg raised his eyebrows slightly as he thought to himself, Vixen. If it were someone else, it would be hard not to misunderstand. Fortunately, he had a wife who supported him, so his heart was naturally as still as water. He smiled and said, If there are any projects like the steam locomotive that require a large amount of funds, I will naturally come and find Miss Hill first. As for these small projects, I won't take up your time. Even I can't take on many projects like the railway. The Hill smiled, but there was some anticipation in her eyes. You don't have to stare at me. There really aren't any projects like this at the moment. Meg shrugged. The steam age had just begun, and he couldn't let everyone enter the electric age directly. He was also afraid that he would ruin the world, and it wouldn't be good if the heavenly axiom punished him. Then I hope that Mr. Meg can think of me first sometimes, the Hill said with a serious face. Of course. Meg took a sip of water from the cup on the table, then got up to leave. He had to go back to cook. On the way back, Meg saw that the temporary stalls in the Aden Square were almost set up. They occupied almost the entire central square of the Aden Square. It was clear that the scale of this food conference was indeed not small. It's too hard for me. Brewing wine isn't even this tiring. It's so hard. I'm so tired that I'm like a dog, Hannah said with a face full of despair after washing her face and going downstairs for lunch. Everyone looked at her with pity. They all knew that the machinery in the factory had exploded 2 days ago, and she had to start all over again. Meg came out with the last serving of eggplant with garlic sauce and looked at Hannah as he said, Although you are as tired as a dog now, you will reap some reward soon. What did you get? Hannah sat up as she looked at Meg expectantly. Even dogs aren't as tired as you. Meg smiled and sat down opposite Hannah. Boss, you... Hannah glared at Meg, her face puffed up with anger. That's right. Look at Ugly Duckling. It eats, sleeps, and eats every day. It's so blissful. Mia patted Ugly Duckling, which was eating beside her feet, with a smile. All right, let's eat. Meg picked up his chopsticks and looked at Hannah with a smile. I went to the textile factory this morning and found you a group of excellent elves. Once your machine is ready, you can start work immediately. Really? Hannah's eyes lit up, and her face was full of joy. She looked at Meg excitedly. Boss, I love you. All right. I can't accept it. Meg quickly waved his hands. Luckily, Irina was not around, and neither was Amy, who could write in a small notebook. When lunch was over, Meg suddenly remembered something. He looked at everyone and said, Oh, right. There's a gourmet conference the day after tomorrow. The Food Association invited us to attend, and I agreed. The restaurant will not be open for business that day, and we will set up a stall. But we have so many dishes? It won't be easy to set up a stall, right? Yaba Mia was a little worried. We will only make 4 dishes that day: stir-fried octopus tentacles, octopus balls, and 2 new dishes that use octopus tentacles as ingredients. Meg smiled. Moreover, I will announce the recipes of these 4 dishes to everyone on that day and conduct a public lesson. The restaurant fell silent, and everyone looked at Meg in disbelief. Boss, are you saying you want to teach everyone how to make those 4 dishes? Reina was a little surprised. Those were the new dishes that had just been released and were very popular. The new dishes that haven't been released in the restaurant are also going to be announced directly to the public? Phyllis was also surprised. Yes, I plan to teach everyone how to make these dishes so that everyone can make delicious food at home. Meg nodded and smiled. As for the two new dishes, I don't plan to let them be released in the restaurant. If they want to know what they taste like, they can only cook them at home or wait for the next restaurant that will make them available. Everyone was even more surprised when they heard that. They did not understand Meg's mysterious operation. I plan to open a shop that specializes in octopus tentacles, and I've already found a supplier. Releasing the recipe is to teach everyone how to eat this thing, and thus open up a market. At the same time, it can also promote the new shop, Meg explained with a smile. Boss, you're really a marketing genius. Angela gave Meg a thumbs up and sincerely admired him. Everyone also understood the relationship between them, and they could not help but look at Meg in a new light. I just don't know if the customers who wanted to eat the new dishes but didn't make it in time will feel angry, Mia said with a smile. It's okay. I'll write an announcement tomorrow to tell them that I'll be releasing the new dishes at the gourmet conference, and it will only be released for one day. Those who are free will naturally go and try it, Meg said nonchalantly. It would be best if they could buy the octopus tentacles and cook them at home. Boss, did that Miss Audrey fall for you? I just saw her queuing outside again. Yabamia looked at Meg and smiled. I'm not too sure about that. Meg sighed and looked up at the ceiling at a 45-degree angle with a hint of melancholy in his eyes. This damn charm. Everyone burst into laughter. All right, let's pack up and get ready to open for business. Meg withdrew his melancholy gaze and said with a smile, Hubby, why do we have to queue for so long every time we come to this restaurant? My legs are already weak from standing. A beautiful young woman gently hammered Vicenio's chest with her pink fist and grumbled softly, If I knew this would happen, I would have played in the car for a while before coming down. If that's the case, I might not be able to get out, Vicenio murmured to himself. However, he still had a doting expression on his face as he hugged the young woman's slender waist and allowed her to lean against him. He coaxed her gently, Don't worry, honey. The restaurant is about to open. Boss Mag's dishes are too delicious, so there's a long line. He glanced forward and saw that Randy was chatting happily with a gentle-looking noblewoman. That noblewoman covered her mouth and chuckled from time to time. Her eyes flickered as she looked at Randy, who was speaking with fervor and assurance. TSK, it seems like Betty likes that friend of yours. I haven't seen her so happy in a long time. Bonnie's gaze also landed on the two of them. She covered her mouth and chuckled. Indeed, the best way to forget a man is to find a more interesting one. Chapter 1835. Randy was really flushed with success at this moment as he chatted with the young woman. He knew all the delicacies in the world like the back of his hand, and he could easily make a legend out of it. That's why I'm so confident. Seeing the sparkle in the young woman's eyes, Randy's lips curled up slightly. From his rich experience, when a woman showed such an expression, it meant that she was already tempted. Randy was not a layman who valued money above all. He liked these beautiful women not because he was greedy for their money, but purely because he wanted to comfort their hurt hearts and let them regain their confidence in life. You don't believe me? All right, he was just greedy for her body. Women like her, who were slightly older but took good care of themselves, knew how to dote on others the most. Those young and beautiful girls could not compare to them. Although the beautiful girls were more energetic, they often did not know where to put their energy. How could they compare to such a delicate and caring beauty? Seems like you have really been to many places. Then, where is the most delicious food? Betty looked at Randy expectantly with a smile. Today, her friend asked her out for a meal and said that she wanted to introduce a young man to her. She didn't want to come at first as she was completely disappointed in men after being hurt by the previous man. However, she couldn't stand Bonnie's pestering, so she had no choice but to pack up and leave. She didn't expect this man, who was not considered handsome, to have a lot of strange knowledge. No matter what she asked, he could give her interesting answers. He had some understanding of all the places in the Norland continent, and gave her the feeling that he was very knowledgeable. If you want to talk about the most delicious food in the world, it's right in front of you. Randy smiled as he looked at Betty with a burning gaze. Glib-tongued. Betty blushed as she glared at Randy coquettishly. However, she was very happy inside. Little lady, when did you say that I'm glib-tongued? Randy pretended to be surprised and smilingly said, I'm saying that the most delicious food in the world is in this Amy's. It's made by Mr. Mac. Betty was slightly taken aback. She looked up at the signboard hanging on the door. It turned out that he was not talking about her, but the restaurant. She blushed instantly. Apart from being embarrassed, she also found it funny. The smile on her lips had not appeared for a long time. Randy was even happier to see her like this. He smiled and said, Of course, the person in front of me is even more beautiful. I'm already 30% full just by looking at her. The smile on Betty's face's head. Her worries were all thrown to the back of her mind and her heart. Welcome to Amy's, Meg said with a smile as he stood. Everyone entered in a single file and found a seat that they were familiar with and sat down. When Randy's name, Meg's name. Meg smiled and nodded. He glanced at the beautiful woman beside him. It was not the first time he heard Randy bragging to others about the beautiful women he had seen. It seemed that he had found a new target and a rich one at that. Betty also took a glance at Mag. This restaurant owner appeared to be quite young, and in contrast with the other restaurant owners who had large bellies and greasy hair and dirty faces, this restaurant owner was tall and thin. He was wearing a clean and tidy chef suit and appeared to be very energetic. Furthermore, he was also quite handsome, and his seductive eyelashes added a hint of maturity to his appearance. Mr. Mac is not only the owner of Amy's, but also the head chef of the restaurant. He can be said to be the best chef in the world today, Randy explained with a smile when he saw that Betty was paying attention to Meg. I heard that chefs rely on experience and craftsmanship. Without decades of experience, one can't become a master chef. I didn't expect him to become a master chef at such a young age, Betty said with a chuckle. Perhaps this is talent. Randy smiled helplessly. I've been to many places and tasted the delicacies made by many chefs. I've also interacted with many of them, but I've never seen a chef like Mr. Mac. Any dish could be the signature dish of this restaurant, but he's always on the path of innovation and always brings surprises. Betty looked at Randy with admiration. She was already past the age of liking self-flattering men. Instead, she was more attracted to men who were not stingy with their praise. Let's sit here. Randy found a 4-seater table near the floor-to-ceiling window. He pulled out a chair for Betty before sitting opposite her. This seat is pretty good. Vicenio sat down with Bonnie. Bonnie held Betty's hand as soon as she sat down. She leaned forward and whispered in her ear, How is it? Do you like it? Betty blushed slightly. She looked up and glanced at Randy, who was chatting with Vicenio, and nodded slightly.
TSK.
A hungry man can't be choosy. Then, you can take him away directly later. We won't accompany you to play. My husband and I have something urgent to attend to, Bonnie said with a smile. Betty naturally knew what her friend's so-called urgent matter was. She blushed even more and glared at her shyly. Don't be envious. If you want, there's one here. Bonnie smiled and gestured in Randy's direction with her gaze. Randy's expression stiffened. He suddenly wondered if he would have to come to Amy's every day like Vicenio to nourish his kidney. After the lunch service ended, Meg made himself a pot of tea and moved the recliner to the entrance of the restaurant. He covered himself with a fluffy blanket and took a comfortable nap under the warm winter sun. There was a slightly smaller recliner beside him, and lay on it and looked at him with her big eyes. Ugly Duckling was nestled beside her feet. It raised its head and yawned before burying its head in the soft blanket again. It closed its eyes and started to snore softly. Meg turned to look at and said in his heart, Omnipotent system, when can you develop a miracle medicine that can make and speak? The system seemed to enjoy Meg's flattery as it said, This system is indeed omnipotent. However, her problem is rather complicated and cannot be solved with just 1 or 2 medicines. After a series of research, this system discovered that there is a fragrant island in the Starro Sea. There is a type of fragrant deer on it. Using its antlers as medicine, might have some effect on her muteness. Star O C, Fragrant Island, Fragrant Deer. Meg made a mental note of this information. No matter if it was really useful, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, he wanted to try it for Anne. If the little girl could not speak for the rest of her life, it would be inconvenient for her to communicate. Furthermore, she might not be able to make new friends. Any other research findings? Meg continued to ask. As a gourmet system, this system's part-time medical research is already very unprofessional. Host, please put away these groundless expectations, the system reprimanded. If you don't understand, you can send a request for help. Doesn't your system have a group chat? Ask the big shots in the industry. Meg was not going to let it go. I've been kicked out of the group chat countless times because of you. Do you think I don't care about my reputation? The system was furious. Chapter 1836. RBQ, RBQ. Meg raised his eyebrows and didn't continue asking, in case the system gave up on itself. However, since the system had already suggested a plan that might work, he would bring Anne to the Star O C in the northeast of the Roth Empire after he was done with his work these 2 days. Meg retracted his thoughts and secretly circulated the technique in his body. That day, he attracted the lightning to blow up the octopus, and accidentally turned himself into a half-god. However, according to the system, his path to becoming a god was more or less cheating. If not for Brother Octopus being kind and taking on half of the lightning tribulation for him, he would have died on the spot. Perhaps it was because of this that he didn't have any light after he became a god, and flowers fell as he walked. Obviously, he didn't get the special effects package from the Heavenly Tao. Moreover, his power was indeed above 10th tier, and he had entered another level. However, this difference wasn't to the extent that he could treat the other party like ants. It was probably the kind where he could fight 10 people at once. Of course, if he hid far away and used his flying sword to kill the enemies, then he could really kill as many as came. Meg took an afternoon nap and brought Anne shopping after he woke up. He walked around the square and bought the little one a candied hawthorn. He also went to the Gourmet Conference's exhibition area that was under construction and found the stall that Robert had arranged for him. Robert was quite considerate. Mamie's stall was set in the center of the entire venue, and the area was twice as big as the stalls next to it. Moreover, there was a custom-made signboard that the workers were installing, and it could be seen from afar. On the way back, he happened to bump into Cece bathing the 2 birds. Charcoal's charred feathers had grown back a little, but it still looked extremely ugly. Green Bean was still in high spirits. It had just finished bathing and was combing its feathers with its beak. Its bright green feathers shone under the sun. "Hi, little girl, I am Fama Odenben. I see that your bones are amazing. You are a good material for practicing martial arts. I have a book here." Charcoal's words were interrupted by a handkerchief that covered its head. "Mr. Mac, and did you go shopping?" Cece asked with a smile. "Yes, I'm taking Anne for some fresh air." Meg smiled and nodded. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly stopped and looked at Cece with some hesitation. "Mr. Mac, what's the matter?" Cece threw Charcoal back into the cage and asked Meg. "There's something I need to trouble you with, Cece." Meg nodded. "Come in and talk." Cece smiled and walked into the magic potion shop with a basin of water. Meg led Anne into the shop. "It's like this. Anne is interested in magic, but I don't know what kind of magic is suitable for her, so I want you to test it for me." Meg went straight to the point as he looked at Cece, who came out of the water basin. Nature magic was as magical as life magic. Only Cece and Lulu knew nature magic, so he wanted to see if Cece and Anne could practice nature magic. "I see." Cece was deep in thought. The day before yesterday, Meg brought Anne to her and asked her to try to cure her muteness. However, life magic didn't work on her muteness, so she had to give up. She liked this quiet little girl. She was at the age where she was lively and active, but she couldn't speak. Apart from life magic, she was also a water magic caster. As a 7th-tier magic caster, it was easy for her to test if a normal person was suitable for magic. "And give me your hand." Cece smiled and said to Anne. She held her hand gently. A small green tree suddenly flashed in her hand, and rays of green light covered their hands. Cece closed her eyes. After a while, she suddenly opened her eyes and looked at Anne in disbelief. Meg knew that she was shocked by Anne's vast mind, but he still asked expectantly, "Can she practice magic?" Annie's situation is very strange. She has an inconceivable sea of consciousness, which is even more vast than mine. Such talent can no longer be described as genius. Cece nodded. However, it seems that she can't practice water magic, but she has shown an affinity for my nature magic. Nature magic works. Meg raised his eyebrows. This was good news. Wait a moment. I'll ask Master Julian to come down and take a look. I'm not that powerful, Cece said, and left quickly. Soon, Julian followed her out. Master Julian. Meg nodded to Julian. Mr. Mac. Julian also nodded slightly, but his eyes lit up when he saw Anne. He stepped forward and touched Connie's forehead with a finger. Circles of ripples spread out slowly. She has such a vast mind even though she hasn't started practicing magic. Julian was shocked, but soon said regretfully, "It's a pity that she has no affinity for ice magic. It seems that she can't practice ice magic." Julian withdrew his finger and looked at Meg. If this girl can find a suitable magic to practice, she will become a great talent in the future. And moved closer to Meg. Although she knew that this old man was not a bad person, she still felt a little scared. Cece hesitated for a moment, but still said, "Master, when I examined and just now, I found that she seems to have an affinity for my nature magic. Can she try to practice nature magic?" "If you are willing to let her learn from you, of course, no problem." Julian nodded. Nature magic was a secret magic of the Druids. Now, Cece and Lulu were the only Druids left. If Anne is willing to learn from me, I will do my best to teach her nature magic. Cece looked at Annie with a smile and said, "The Druids have already declined. If we still adhere to the rules of the past, nature magic will disappear without a trace sooner or later. That would be the real loss." "Mr. Meg, what do you think?" Cece turned to Meg and asked. She knew that Meg had adopted and so she was his guardian. If Cece is willing to take Anne as her disciple, that would be great. Meg nodded. Nature magic and life magic existed side by side. It was a mysterious magic created by the Druids with the help of the World Tree. Anne was kind and gentle. She was very compatible with nature magic. Of course, he was willing to let her learn nature magic. "And are you willing to learn magic from me?" Cece asked with a smile as she held Anne's hand. Annie looked at Cece's gentle smile, and a smile also appeared on her face as she nodded vigorously. No pop-up window. Chapter 1837. After Anne became Cece's disciple, Cece asked her to stay behind. She said that she wanted to spend more time with Anne to cultivate their relationship before teaching her step by step. Meg knew that Cece was a gentle and attentive lady, and now that she had become Anne's teacher, he naturally had no objections. He returned to the restaurant alone. "Master, where are we going to eat now?" Amy chewed on corn on the cob as she followed beside Crassus. Her cheeks were puffed up like a silly little hamster. "Little Amy, haven't you had enough?" Crassus was holding a small basket in his hand. It was filled with all kinds of snacks and snacks. He looked at Amy, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The little fellow had dragged him everywhere to look for good food as soon as they arrived at Rodu. They had already eaten 3 streets, but she still had no intention of stopping. Her target was always the next street. I think I can eat 3 more streets." Amy nodded honestly. "Take these and eat them on the way. We have to go to the Magus Tower now to meet some people," Crassus said with a smile as he waved the basket in his hand. "All right." Amy nodded reluctantly and followed Crassus into the horse-drawn carriage. "Master, is the Magus Tower a tower built by magic casters? How many magic casters were used when it was built?" Amy asked curiously as she chewed on the corn on the cob. Um, Crassus raised his eyebrows. Why did this question sound so strange? The Magus Tower is the holy land in the hearts of the magic casters in the Roth Empire. It gathers the best magic casters in the Roth Empire. They study magic here and take in apprentices. This has increased the number of magic casters in the Roth Empire and made them stronger. Then why aren't you there? Are you not good enough? Amy tilted her head. Crassus didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I was the one who built the Magus Tower. I just don't want to continue managing it now. Really? Amy's eyes lit up. I didn't expect Master to be so awesome. Of course, little Amy. Your master is the most famous magic caster on the Norland continent, the god of fire, Crassus. He founded the Magus Tower all those years ago. Crassus suddenly realized that Amy had fallen silent. He turned around, only to discover that she was completely engrossed in searching for food in her basket. She was debating whether to eat the chicken leg or the wheat biscuit first, and wasn't listening to him at all. Alas! Crassus sighed in his heart. Only his disciple would not take his words seriously. After all, the number of people who wanted to be his disciple could line up from the bottom of the Magus Tower all the way to the city gates. Master, do I have to fight with them later? Amy finally decided to eat the chicken leg first. She took a bite of the chicken leg and asked. Crassus said with a smile, the magic tournament won't officially begin until tomorrow morning. Amy, do you want to fight kids or adult magic casters? It's too boring for me to fight a kid with one punch. Amy shook her head. Her eyes were sparkling as she clenched her little fists and said, I want to fight the older magic casters. I can punch them a few more times. All right, then Master will arrange for you to participate in the tournament in the adult category. Crassus nodded. He knew Amy's strength very well. She could even fight in the adult category. If she went to the children's category, she would be bullying the kids. The horse-drawn carriage stopped in front of the Magus Tower. The magic casters in front of the tower looked at the horse-drawn carriage warily. One of them even stepped forward with a magic caster staff. A little girl in a full set of Magus robes jumped out of the carriage with a wheat biscuit in her hand. Then, an old man with white hair and a beard came out of the carriage. That young magic caster was stunned. Then he exclaimed, Master Crassus. The magic casters in and out of the Magus Tower all looked in their direction. When their gazes landed on Crassus, they were all pleasantly surprised. They all gathered around Crassus and bowed respectfully to him. Master Crassus. Wow, so Master really has so many underlings. Amy was shocked. Crassus nodded solemnly. He flicked his sleeves and walked into the Magus Tower with Amy. However, there was a smug smile at the corner of his mouth. These juniors are really giving me face. Master Crassus is still as handsome as before. Yes, he's the founder of our Magus Tower, the god of fire, the most powerful magic caster in the Roth Empire, and a legendary powerhouse that even giant dragons are afraid of. Is that little girl the new disciple that the old man recently accepted? She's so small and so cute. She's our little junior sister. Hey, according to seniority, you have to call her little Aunt Master. Could it be that Master Crassus brought her back this time to participate in the Magic Caster Convention? Such a young contestant has never appeared even in the children's group. All the magic casters discussed softly. They were very curious about Crassus' return with his little disciple. Along the way, all the magic casters were surprised to see Crassus, but they still bowed respectfully. Although Crassus had retired from the Magus Tower for many years and had previously announced that he was leaving, his influence in the Magus Tower was still indelible. Wow, Master, you're hanging on the wall. Amy suddenly stopped in her tracks and pointed at the huge mural at the entrance. In the middle was Crassus, who was wearing a Magus robe and holding a magic caster's staff. This is called the Wall of Merit. It's not hanging on the wall, Crassus explained helplessly. The people around them covered their mouths and chuckled. This little girl's words carried no harm. She was too cute. That annoying old man is here too. Amy then pointed at Richard's portrait at the side. Everyone fell silent. Their expressions were a little strange, but they didn't dare to talk about it. They had long heard that President Richard and Master Crassus didn't get along, but they only dared to talk about it in private. They didn't expect this little girl to point at President Richard's mural and call him that annoying old man. This was the current president of the Magus Tower, a 10th-tier great magic caster, and one of the most powerful magic casters in the Roth Empire. He is quite annoying. Crassus nodded and continued to walk forward with Amy. They hadn't walked far when Brent, who was rolling over like a mountain of meat, stopped in front of them. He wiped the sweat off his forehead and smiled at Crassus. "Why are you here?" Crassus glanced at Brent and sneered. "I built this tower. Do I need to report to you before I come to take a look?"
No, no, no.
"Of course you don't need to report to me. It's just that we didn't even get a chance to properly prepare for your arrival." Brent hurriedly shook his head, and the fat on his face rippled as he turned pale with fright. "Heh, little Amy, let's go." Crassus chuckled indifferently and continued onward. "Uncle, it's time for you to lose weight. Although you won't look good even if you lose weight," Amy said to Brent with a smile before skipping after Crassus. Chapter 1838. As Amy had gone to Rodu, she was worried that, and would be scared, so Irina slept with her. Meg slept very peacefully on his single bed. "As long as the host is cowardly enough, 404 won't be able to catch up with me. You bunch of scumbags." A line of words flashed past his mind quickly. The system that posted the group mockery was kicked out of the group chat again. The next morning, the first thing Meg did after he woke up was to write an announcement. Mamis will be participating in the Chaos Cities Gourmet Conference tomorrow. At the same time, we will launch 2 new limited edition products of the Gourmet Conference tomorrow. They will only be launched on the day of the Gourmet Conference and will not appear on the restaurant's menu. At the same time, I will announce the complete recipe for the octopus series of dishes at the Gourmet Conference and conduct on-site lessons. Are you tempted? More than tempted. I'm cracking open. Does this limited edition product mean that it's a one-day product? Does that mean that if we miss this day, we'll have to wait another year? Announce the recipe and conduct on-site lessons? I think the Food Association must have made a deal with Mr. Mac. What I lack is learning how to cook it. What I lack is fresh octopus. This thing can't be bought in the seafood market at all. Anyway, I've already decided to let all my chefs observe and learn tomorrow, and let them learn what cooking is. If I learn it, will I be able to open a restaurant? The customers queuing at the door were in an uproar when they saw the announcement. Are you sure they can learn it? Irina stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at the excited customers outside with a doubtful attitude. These people didn't look like they knew how to cook at all. If they can't learn it, there will naturally be others who can. Meg smiled. Besides, you don't have to be like me. As long as you master the method and steps, you can easily beat the home-cooked dishes on their tables. Irina looked back at Anne, who was still munching on her tofu pudding, and said with a smile, Anne's nature magic seems to be very suitable for her. Let's let her continue to learn from Cece today. Her world tree can greatly increase her cultivation speed. All right, then I'll send her over in a bit. Meg nodded. Anne's talent was truly astonishing to be able to enter the sect in just one day. I heard from Ashley that you plan to expand the factory? Yes, there are more than 30,000 night elves, and the number is still increasing. Although the textile factory is now self-sufficient, it has not reached the level where all the night elves can live a happy life. I intend to do my best to give all the night elves something to do. Meg nodded. With my shares in the textile factory, I plan to set up an employee happiness foundation. 10% of the annual income will be used for public welfare, and the remaining 90% will be distributed to all the employees. Irina looked at Meg, her eyes sparkling. It's okay. This is what I should do. Meg smiled. This is all my money. You're so generous. Irina rolled her eyes, but the smile on her face did not disappear. Also, I plan to recruit night elves for the brewery that I'm collaborating with Hannah. The salary will be the same as the textile factory, and the technical talents will be able to get a higher salary, Meg continued. Yes, Ashley mentioned this to me. You can look for her for this matter. She knows better than me who you need. Irina nodded slightly. She glanced at the clock on the wall and said, I'm leaving. Helena wants to meet me outside the city today. Do you need me to go with you? No need.
Just let Ozzy follow me.
She doesn't have the guts to touch me now. Irina shook her head and said goodbye to Anne. A golden light flashed under her feet, and she disappeared from the restaurant.
Ding.
The bell rang outside the door. Phyllis and the others had arrived. After the morning business hours, Meg went straight to the seafood shop. The acting store manager, Aaliyah, was already waiting outside the shop with the other 9 elves. The group of 10 people, handsome men and beautiful women, was a sight to behold just by standing at the door, attracting the attention of passers-by. You guys are quite early. Meg stopped his bicycle in front of the door and smiled at everyone. We just arrived too. Aaliyah smiled, her tone gentle. Let's go in first. Meg used the key to unlock the small door. After entering, he pressed a button to raise the shutter door, and a 3-sided shop officially appeared. The 1-meter-wide display counter-circled around the outside of the shop and was divided into 10 areas. A simple high stool was placed under the counter, which could be used to rest temporarily during leisure time. The elves looked curiously at the place where they were going to work. Compared to the textile factory, the decoration here was more exquisite. These counters will be your work area. There are a total of 10 areas, and each of you will have a fixed area. The areas will be allocated according to the drawing of lots later. Meg looked at everyone with a smile and confidently said, I have already told everyone yesterday that our shop is a comprehensive seafood shop. However, we are only selling octopus tentacles now. Our goal is to sell octopus tentacles as popular items and make everyone in Chaos City fall in love with octopus tentacles. Everyone looked at Meg with a glimmer in their eyes. Although they had not reached the level of fighting spirit, they had a clear understanding of themselves and this shop. Meg took out a small and thin sales guide and passed it to Aaliyah. After that, he said, This is a sales guide for octopus tentacles. We don't need any marketing skills to make popular items. We rely on the top quality and the low price to directly impact the customer's perception. However, we need a matching sales attitude, respect for customers, and respect for ourselves. As for the specific details, you can go back and study it slowly. However, I hope that everyone can go to the store manager tomorrow morning to recite the contents of the Employee Code of Conduct. Aaliyah distributed the guide to everyone. Some elves secretly opened it to take a look, and heaved a sigh of relief when they realized that there were only 20 articles in the Employee Code of Conduct. Next, I will bring everyone around to familiarize themselves with the shop. Meg clapped his hands to attract everyone's attention, and then led them around the shop. There was a lounge that was separated from the work area. There were separate sections for men and women, and they could take a short break during the lunch break. The beds were complete, and floor heating was installed. There were teas and snacks in the leisure and entertainment area. After all, this was a working environment, so Meg did not set up any entertainment facilities. Instead, he set up a massage chair so that they could rest on it after a busy day of work to relax their bodies and minds. There were also toilets for men and women. All the elves were elated. A comfortable lounge, an exquisite and interesting leisure area. Who would have thought that there would be such a thoughtful design hidden in the shop? Such a working environment could not be better. They began to look at Mag with more respect and affection. A boss like this was too considerate of his employees, and they could feel the respect and love that he had for them. No pop-up windows. Chapter 1839. The second floor is the cold storage. All the frozen goods are stored in the warehouse on the second floor. We can go directly to the cold storage through the freight elevator.
Let me show you.
Mag led everyone to the freight elevator and demonstrated how to use the idiotic freight elevator. The freight elevator went directly into the cold storage. As soon as the elevator doors opened, the lights came on. Rows of shelves were filled with octopus tentacles of different sizes. They were placed in square units. The spacious second floor was 200 square meters in size. It was almost filled with octopus tentacles of all sizes. There were tentacles as small as a thumb and tentacles as large as a thigh. They were densely packed together, giving people a sense of psychological pressure. These octopus tentacles are placed according to their sizes: small, large, and large. When you need them, just take 1 square meter and put them in the one-button de-icing machine to remove them from their frozen state. Then, transport them to the first floor through the freight elevator for restocking. Meg pointed at the square de-icing machine beside the freight elevator. It was also a one-button de-icing machine. "Boss, don't you have medium octopus tentacles?" an elf asked in a low voice. "No, we don't. We only have small, large, and large sizes." Meg nodded. "What if the customer insists on ordering a medium size?" the elf asked again. "It doesn't matter. Let him slap his own mouth." Meg smiled and looked at everyone. "We'll have a trial opening at noon today. Tomorrow we might welcome the first burst of sales. Everyone, familiarize yourselves with the work. Be familiar with the accounting, the change, and the restocking. The workload will probably exceed your expectations." Hearing this, everyone immediately got to work under Aaliyah's command. The small cart sent the frozen octopus tentacles into the de-icing machine. After 3 seconds of de-icing, the octopus tentacles that were stuck together immediately became distinct, but still maintained their frozen state. Everyone's sales area was divided into 3 grids, which were used to store 3 different sizes of octopus tentacles. The size was just right for 1 octopus tentacle. These compartments all had a cooling effect. They could keep the octopus tentacles in a frozen state and prevent them from going bad. "Boss, our shop doesn't seem to have a signboard yet." Aaliyah looked at Meg and said, "I would have forgotten if you didn't mention it." Meg was stunned for a moment. He actually forgot such an important thing. After thinking for a while, he said, "Let's call it Little Siri's Seafood Shop." "Little Siri's Seafood Shop?" Aaliyah repeated the name and felt that it sounded a little strange. But since it was a name given by the boss, she couldn't object.
So she nodded.
"Host. This system objects to the shop name. How is this system little?" The system's dissatisfied voice. "System. Isn't this the shop that we're collaborating on? I used the combination of Little Amy and System as the shop's name to show how much I value you. It's very difficult to find a shop name that's so meaningful nowadays," Mag said earnestly. This was a Little Siri's Seafood Shop. Everyone placed the octopus tentacles on the stall in an orderly manner. The piles of octopus tentacles looked quite spectacular. But for people with acrophobia, it was a little unsightly. The seafood shop was located at the entrance of the Aden market. People coming and going from the square as well as people entering the market could see the shop at a glance. Meg set the price of the octopus tentacles at 50 copper coins per caddy. Regardless of the size, it would start at half a caddy. This price was already quite a discount for seafood. If it was any lower, it would make people suspicious of its origin. Moreover, this was not just seafood. This was fresh, great old dominators. The system gave Meg a cost of 5 copper coins per caddy, and it included the logistics fees. According to the system, this thing was cut again and again. It was even better than cutting leeks. Leeks had to wait a few days before they could be cut again. But the octopus tentacles didn't have to wait. They grew back immediately after they were cut. He didn't even have to consider the feelings of the great old dominators. After deducting all the costs, the net profit of half a caddy of octopus tentacles would be about 40 copper coins. According to the system's daily output of 100 tons, the best-case scenario was to sell them all. Then, this octopus tentacle shop would bring him a net profit of 8 million copper coins a day. Of course, this was the ideal situation. This shop at the entrance of the market obviously wouldn't be able to sell 100 tons a day. After the shop was established, Meg planned to open branches in all the markets and crowded areas in Chaos City. He planned to take over the entire seafood market in Chaos City. This was a piece of virgin land that had yet to be reclaimed. He wanted to use the first hoe to dig out 10,000 taels of gold. The location of the shop was excellent, and the octopus tentacles on the shelf were very eye-catching. However, Most of the passers-by only glanced at it curiously. Almost no one went up to ask, as they didn't know what it was and how to eat it. Although business was slow, Meg didn't mind. Today's trial opening was to let the employees familiarize themselves with the sales process. I will put up the signboard tonight. You all can knock off at 5 p.m. today and go to work at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. Meg gave Aaliyah a few simple instructions before returning to the restaurant. The organizer of the delicacy conference only provided the venue. As for how to set it up, it was up to the exhibitors themselves. Luckily, Meg only planned to make 4 dishes, and one of them was octopus sashimi. Hence, he only needed 2 stoves, 1 octopus ball roasting plate, and 2 big frying pans. Because the main purpose of participating in this exhibition was to bring goods to the small seafood shop, Meg planned to split the venue into 2. Half of it would be allocated to the small seafood shop to display and sell the octopus tentacles. Meg recruited 2 orcs on the spot and got them to help move the stoves and frozen display cabinets. The venue was opened in less than an hour. Compared to the surrounding booths with individual guest seats, Amy's booth didn't even have a single chair. Meg's goal was very clear. He wanted to prevent the customers from staying for too long and maximize the number of customers to achieve the effective promotion. Not far away, there was a public dining area set up by the delicacy conference. The customers could eat their takeout there, and the dining experience wouldn't be reduced too much. Mr. Mack, have you started setting up the venue? Robert happened to be directing the work on the spot. When he saw Meg, he walked over with a smile. It's already set up, Meg said with a smile. That's it. Robert couldn't help but be a little surprised when he saw that the venue was a little empty due to the overly simple layout.
Yes.
I will only make 4 dishes for this gourmet conference. 2 of them are the new dishes that are limited to the gourmet conference, and they will only appear on the day of the gourmet conference. Furthermore, I will announce the recipes for these 4 dishes on the spot and conduct on-site lessons, Mag said with a smile. Chapter 1840. 2 limited new products. For recipes to be made public. On-site teaching. Robert's face was like a blooming chrysanthemum, and his smile gradually became perverted. These were the secret recipes of Chaos City's #1 chef, or even the Norland continent's #1 chef, and he actually made them public at the gourmet conference. More importantly, he still had to conduct on-site teaching. And for the gourmet conference, he even launched 2 limited new products. Robert looked at Meg with a touched gaze. He didn't expect Mr. Meg to be so cooperative with the Food Association's work. He really couldn't repay his generosity and character. Meg felt a little uncomfortable under Robert's burning gaze. He even suspected that this president had bad intentions towards him. President Robert, other than cooking, I also intend to bring some goods. That shouldn't be a problem, right? Meg asked. Of course not. The gourmet conference is very compatible. As long as it's related to food, you can sell anything you want. Robert nodded with a smile, and then fawningly said, Mr. Mack, do you have any other requests? As long as we can do it, we'll arrange it for you immediately. No need. The location is pretty good, and the venue is spacious enough. It's pretty good. Meg shook his head and looked at his watch. Then, I'll go back first. We still have to open for business at noon. All right, you can go now. Robert nodded and watched Meg leave. He called the staff in charge of publicity over. Add an eye-catching slogan at the entrance. Do you want to cook the delicacies of a high-end restaurant at home? Mamie's head chef is making public her best-selling recipes for the first time. On-site teaching and the launch of limited new products at the gourmet conference. All right. The staff accepted the order and left. Rodu. The square in front of the Magus Tower was bustling with noise. Hundreds of thousands of Rhoda's citizens and all the court officials were gathered here. Among them were countless magic casters and people who dreamed of becoming magic casters. Today was the opening day of the Triennial Magic Caster Conference and also the first day of the most intense duels and competitions. The Magic Caster Conference was hosted by the Magus Tower and hosted by the Roth Empire's king himself. It gathered the best young magic casters in the Roth Empire and represented the highest standard of the Roth Empire's younger generation. This was a stage for the disciples of the Mage Tower to prove themselves. It was an opportunity for countless rogue cultivators to enter the Mage Tower. It was also a stepping stone for the mage families to advance further. After all, once one entered the top 32 in the Magus Grand Meeting, one would be able to enter the Magus Tower to study, and those that entered the top 10 might even be specially hired as teachers. As for the first place, it was said that one would obtain an extremely precious violet gold magic stone and be able to become a disciple of a 10th level Great Magus. Whether it was the purple gold magic stone that could increase the strength of one's mental strength or becoming a disciple of a great mage, both were extremely attractive to young mages. Even if they couldn't enter the top 32, if they performed outstandingly in the magic conference, they might be noticed by the military or personal financial backers and receive better resources and status. This was the reason why all magicians flocked to the Great Magic Conference. The Mage Conference was held once every 3 years. If he missed this one, he would have to wait for another 3 years. Some mages grew old as they waited. There were more than 4,000 mages participating in this magic conference, and these were the mages who had qualified to participate after the elimination rounds. They were all 4th tier and above. The successive kings of the Roth Empire placed equal emphasis on magic and martial arts. For the past 100 years, they had supported the Magus Tower and nurtured mages. They had also given them a lot of room for improvement, allowing many people who couldn't practice martial arts to join the ranks of magic apprentices. The huge population base and supportive policies had given birth to many powerful mages. This was also the reason why the Roth Empire's power had risen in the past 100 years to become a terrifying existence second only to the giant dragons. Although there were no seats set up in the spacious square, this didn't dampen the enthusiasm of the spectators. The Magus Tower had set up huge projection screens that were dozens of meters tall in the square to broadcast the exciting scenes of the Magic Conference live. This was also how most ordinary people watched the Magic Conference. However, the projection screen was showing the high platform directly below the Magus Tower. The king, queen, a group of nobles, and the great magi of the Magus Tower were sitting in the VIP seats. This almost represented the highest level of power in the Roth Empire. It showed how much importance the king placed on the magic conference. Could the one sitting next to the queen be Princess Vanessa? I remember that she hasn't attended a public event for a long time. Yes, I haven't seen her for many years. The adorable little princess from back then has become even more beautiful now. Those fellows who slandered her beauty deserve to die. The princess has inherited the queen's beauty perfectly. When everyone saw Vanessa, they began to whisper among themselves. But why isn't His Highness Josh here? Is he going to participate in this year's magic conference? Sure. Is His Highness the second prince someone you can talk about? Some people also noticed that Josh wasn't here. However, in Rodu, the first prince and the second prince were taboo existences that couldn't be casually mentioned. The camera panned to Crassus, who was sitting on the left of the king. Cheers erupted from the crowd instantly. To this legendary magic caster, who had single-handedly built the Magus Tower and made outstanding contributions to the promotion of magic, both ordinary people and magic casters had great respect for him. If the most legendary knight in the Roth Empire was Alex, then the most legendary magic caster would definitely be Crassus. That half-elf girl standing next to Lord Crassus is so cute. She's even gnawing on a drumstick. Could she be the disciple that Lord Crassus took in? She's so small. She looks like she's only 3 or 4 years old. Is she also going to participate in today's magic conference? Such a young magic caster. Even the children's group has never appeared before. Lord Crassus must have brought her here to broaden her horizons. Yes, the contestants are all waiting below for the start of the competition. She's still gnawing on a drumstick here. She's definitely not going to participate. Everyone's attention was quickly attracted by Amy, who was gnawing on a drumstick next to Crassus. They couldn't help but whisper among themselves. At this moment, A magic caster with white hair and beard walked to the center of the stage. He raised his hand, and a powerful aura emanated from him. The crowd quietened down instantly. They looked at that magic caster with reverence in their eyes. Richard, the president of the Magus Tower, was an extremely powerful magic caster. Ladies and gentlemen, today is the opening day of the annual Magic Conference. I am the president of the Magus Tower, Richard. The Magus Tower will ensure that this competition is fair and just. I hope that all the participating magic casters will abide by the rules of the competition and show off their abilities and style. Richard's deep voice reverberated throughout the entire square. His cold gaze swept across the contestants, lined up at the side. He paused for a moment before continuing. Next, let's welcome His Majesty to speak. Chapter 1841. The entire place was silent. Everyone's eyes were on the king, who was standing up slowly in the middle of the screen. King Andrei had been on the throne for decades. He had managed the country well with his military and political skills. The people were healthy and the country was strong.
He had the support of the people.
Andrei was very satisfied with the gazes of the people below the stage. He enjoyed the passionate gazes from his people because it meant that he was still in control of everything. He was still the king that everyone adored. Of course, it would be even better if it were all the races below the stage. Andrei looked at the neat rows of magic casters below the stage and said in a loud voice, "Magic casters of the Empire, I have been here to witness the rise of magic casters one after another, to become the pillars of the Empire, to become legends in the magic world. I believe that the next legend will be born among you. For the glory of the magic casters, for the glory of the Empire, fight with all your might. I will be here to witness your legends. Your Majesty, Your Majesty, Your Majesty." The cheers were deafening, and the eyes of the magic casters lit up. "Good luck." Andrei smiled and returned to his seat. The magic caster in charge waited for the cheers to die down before saying loudly, "Next, let's invite Master Crassus to open the Magic Caster Conference." Everyone looked at Crassus. The Lord of Fire, Crassus, the legend of the magic world, the founder of the Magus Tower, the guiding light of the rise of the magic casters in the Roth Empire, the initiator of the Magic Caster Conference, and the idol of most of the magic casters in the Roth Empire. It could be said that he was the one who created the magic casters who could stand up to the knights. Crassus stood up slowly and walked to the front of the stage under the heated gazes of the magic casters. Crassus looked at the magic casters below the stage with a sigh. "I'm very relieved to be able to stand here again and look at you young and energetic juniors, the pillars of the magic world in the future. Crassus. Crassus." There were already cheers below the stage. "Little Amy, your braids look really good today." While Crassus was speaking in front, Vanessa moved closer to Amy and said softly, "Don't worry." Amy took a bite of her drumstick and looked up at Vanessa. "Big sister Vanessa, I know you want my drumstick."
Air.
Vanessa swallowed her saliva with an awkward expression. After all, she was the princess of the Empire. Although there was food in front of her, she was too embarrassed to eat a drumstick like Amy in public. Although it was definitely fragrant, it was definitely not elegant enough. "Big sister Vanessa, if you're not eating, can you pass me your drumstick?" Amy finished the drumstick in her hand very quickly and then stared at the drumstick in front of Vanessa. Vanessa was a little hesitant. Although she wasn't eating it now, she wanted to save it for later. The drumstick looked very fragrant, and it was even more fragrant when she saw Amy eating it. "The next time you go to Chaos City, I'll return you 2 drumsticks from the beggar's chicken," Amy said seriously.
Deal.
Vanessa immediately passed the whole plate of drumsticks to Amy. No matter how fragrant the drumstick was, it couldn't compare to Mr. Mac's beggar's chicken. No matter how she looked at it, she wouldn't lose out in this deal. A qualified foodie couldn't sit back and watch a delicious dish turn cold in front of her. "This little girl is really cute." Although the queen maintained a dignified demeanor, She saw the exchange between Vanessa and Amy, and a smile appeared at the corner of her lips. Vanessa had been accompanying her these few days, and told her many things about Chaos City. She talked about that Mamie's the most. This lass was mesmerized by that restaurant, and that was why she wanted to go to Chaos City every day. And the daughter of that restaurant's owner, who was taken in as Master Crassus' disciple, was this cute little half-elf girl beside her. Are you sure Crassus' disciple is going to participate in this competition? Richard sent a voice transmission to Brent at the side without batting an eyelid.
Yes.
One of the reasons he agreed to participate in the competition back then was to let his disciple participate in the magic caster competition. With his personality of wanting to be in the limelight, he would definitely let his disciple participate in the junior division and get first place. Brent nodded and revealed a sly smile. But don't worry, President. I found a genius from the Fuller family, Cassidy. He just reached the 7th tier recently and was well hidden by the Fuller family. He intends to make a name for himself in the magic caster competition. I agreed to take him in as my disciple and lowered his age by 5 years. I let him participate in the junior division, and he will definitely crush her. Very good. Richard smiled as he looked at Crassus' back. He was already tired of seeing Crassus' smug look and hoped to see some disappointment on his face today. We magic casters should strive for self-improvement and protect the country, the people, and the weak. I hope that when you become the pillars of the country in the future, you will still not forget your original intention. I hereby announce that this year's magic caster competition is officially open. Crassus announced loudly. Thunderous applause erupted from the audience. The magic casters were even more eager to fight. They all wanted to make a name for themselves in this magic caster competition. Little Amy, are you full? Crassus returned to his seat and looked at Amy, who had just picked up a little drumstick, with a doting expression. Almost. Amy nodded and took another bite of the drumstick. Come, this is your contestant number tag. See who draws you later, and you will go and fight with them. Crassus tied a black wooden tag with a number engraved on it to Amy's little belt. Okay. Amy nodded, not minding it at all. The magic caster in the black magic robe floated up again and announced loudly, the magic caster competition officially begins. The contestants in the junior division and the mage division will draw lots to determine their opponents, and the winner will advance to the next round. Today, all the contestants will compete in 8 consecutive rounds to determine the top 32. In the mage division, contestants whose numbers are before 2050 will remain where they are. Contestants whose numbers are from 2051 will randomly grab a flying ball. The number that appears when the flying ball explodes will be your opponent. In the junior division, contestants whose numbers are 500 will remain where they are. Contestants whose numbers are after 500 will grab a flying ball to determine your opponent. The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the huge ball at the edge of the platform. Thousands of numbers wrapped in bubbles were ready to go. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.